Hey, everybody. This is the Film Tangents show, and this
Happy
is
Halloween.
our spooky special.
Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween,
Film
everybody.
Tangents audience. This is Halloween. This is Halloween. Halloween, 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 Halloween.
Now, mind you, some clearance. And it is that we're actually recording this episode in July
Yeah.
27, 2022.
Yeah. Been a long time coming.
And I have some predictions to make about what Halloween 2023 will be looking like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my biggest prediction for that time of the year is that what's a what's a current event that's
Yeah. Yeah. I was already stacking them in my mind. I'm like, oh, there's going to be a submarine of billionaires that goes missing, and
yeah.
yeah, that's like the not to keep ripping on religion, but that's like what the Bible does. The Bible tries to pretend like it came before certain events, like it predicted
Yeah.
it. And then scholars have been like, no, this is a giveaway that they wrote it after, and they're just trying to be
Really?
sneaky
That's
bastards.
hilarious.
Yeah. It's like if you tried to say, like, I live in George Washington's time and I know that there's going to be a civil war in the 1800s. I also own an iPhone. It's like,
Mhm.
you're fucking lying.
Right.
It's like, you're actually writing this in 2023.
That's pretty funny.
But I
It's
digress.
like let's just talk about past events as if they haven't happened.
Yeah.
And this will make us be very ahead
Yeah.
of the times.
Yeah, they're sneaky bastards. There's a word for that in history when you find somebody comment that below. Someone who's not an idiot and thinks that we're actually posting the full. Well, this is the Halloween special, but
yeah, that keeps happening.
someone who isn't an idiot and doesn't think that we're actually posting full movies here. Because you know, I guess I could see how they get fooled. I mean, if you put the name of a podcast followed by the movie you're reviewing, it must be the full movie, right?
Yeah, I think we've benefited from that a little bit with how many views certain videos have. I guess those are like weirdly just like hot movies somewhere
Yeah.
where people are just like trying to watch them on YouTube, and it's like, well, this is not a George Romero movie, sir. But funnily enough, those Romero movies that we have put up there, they all do have their movies on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually have Night of the Living Dead with our babbling asses talking over it,
Yeah.
but it's Halloween,
Yeah.
everybody. It's Halloween of 2023. Happy Halloween. We made it. Another October come and gone. It's crazy, dude. This month flew by. I even started celebrating Halloween a little early this year. I started watching the scary movies mid-September, man. Right when it got cold, I was like, boom, I'm
Mhm.
putting on the scary movies. I'm getting in the zone. And it's never long enough, man. It's never long enough. Every year,
That's
dude,
how,
I love it more every year. Like, it really is my favorite time of the year. More than
yeah.
Christmas. I love November. I love Thanksgiving time. Like, maybe that may be my favorite time of the year.
Mhm.
Probably my second favorite. October is my favorite, man.
Yeah.
I love October.
That's how it is with everything, isn't it? You know, all these like anything that it's like you're having fun or it's like worth doing. It's like the shortest amount of time.
Exactly.
The longest amount of time is always pain. Pain always lasts so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Favorite what is
Sounds like a
it's like
pinhead line from
it's like
Hellraiser.
January like from January till the end of September. It's like pain. And then it's like, oh, some joy,
Yeah.
some interspersed with pain. It's not all joy, and then pain. You know.
This feels like the longest year of my life only because it's been a good year, but I think the reason it feels so long is because I got a job promotion in January, and then but it was like a temporary type position within the company, and then I would either have to go to the next stage or fall back. It's a long story. And then after my tenure in that sort of contract position, I guess you could say, was up, I got a new job in April, and like a new company. I took a pay bump, better job, better benefits and everything, and work from home, all that. And dude, I think those things combined made this year feel super long because it just felt like I packed a lot in. But it's starting to fly by now. I mean, it feels like it was just like the last week of September, and I was getting starting to get into the Halloween zone and everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's funny that you say that because for me, it's felt the opposite. And I know that you and I have had kind of similar trajectories this year, in the sense that both of us have kind of had those same situations work-wise. But somehow for me, it's been like, oh, and everything has just been like flying by, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, because you've gotten like promotions and transfers and stuff this year too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's been weird because then for me it's like, it's like, oh geez, like, oh, we're in October. And it's like, a lot of the work that I've been doing, I started in October of last year and it feels like it bleeped and now it's like October again.
Yeah, it's nuts, dude.
Yeah.
No, life starts to go by quick, I feel like, when you get older. That's why I take my, my writing career very fucking seriously because I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
25. I got, I mean, the human lifespan has become pretty long, but at the same time, I want to be able to enjoy being a full-time writer for as long as possible. That's kind of my goal right now, is to like how urgently and how soon, because I've spent the last 8 years of my life writing
Mhm.
daily, perfecting my craft. Like I've put in the 10,000 hours,
Mhm.
the whole 10,000 hours rule. I put in the fucking 10,000 hours. Probably. I mean, every day, a few hours a day for 8 years, that's got to be,
It's gonna add up to something.
that's got, yeah, that's
It's
got,
gonna
I
add
mean,
up to
that's
something.
what, 1,000 hours a year, give or take. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
been like, I'm at maybe 8,000 hours. So I'm damn close. But yeah, because I want to fucking, dude, I want to get published and be able to enjoy life as a full-time writer for as long as possible. But
Mhm.
I fully accept that it may take until I'm, might not be till I'm like 40 that I become a full-time published
Right.
author.
As it's happened to some, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It could be even longer than that. That would be
Or it
like,
could be tomorrow.
yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Exactly. It could be when I'm 28. That'd be great.
No,
That'd be fucking awesome.
the matches. So it's like you're Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, right.
Can we like when I'm 28? That'll be great.
I did rhyme there, didn't I?
Yeah.
But it's Halloween, everybody. Edward and I have had, when we were in college, we had many a Halloween memory, going to parties. I think we pulled a prank on somebody one Halloween, I remember.
Did we really? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we did it. We did it.
yeah,
I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah, we're ding dong and ditching, I think. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Halloween, the scariest Halloween I've ever had, Edward, was the Halloween our freshman year of college.
I
Because that's
remember.
the year that we partook in the devil's lettuce, and that was the last time I've ever. That's the last time I've ever partaken, dude.
Since
Halloween of
since then,
2016, dude.
since then you've started your transformation
Yeah,
to become CM Punk.
yeah, right. As I sit here smoking a cigar, I'm like, well, I don't smoke weed. That's something. No, dude. Oh my god. Yeah, Edward and I went to a Halloween party off campus. Pretty good party, and
Mhm.
we found our connect there. We found our plug,
Yeah.
and went to the
And
car.
he
We
hooked us
rolled
up.
up. Dude, he warned
Mhm.
us too. He warned us. He said that's some serious shit. I was like, yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks. Here's your money. Thanks. Uh, and yeah, we went speed racer on that puppy.
Yeah, yeah, but like it was interesting the reactions that we had because for me, I remember I was like, oh, I'm just chilling, I'm grilling.
Yeah. I remember you said when we got back, you were like, I wish I got as high as you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I had a panic attack. I had to leave the party. I walked home. I walked back to campus through the hood, and got lost several times. I might still be there for all I know. This could all just
Bro,
be a
this is
hallucination.
this is just a hallucination. It's like, oh, we've graduated,
Yeah.
we've gotten jobs, now we're doing this show, but it's
Yeah.
like you're just like wandering around.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, life's been pretty good, but I could have hallucinated through a lot less bullshit. I feel like, like, did I really have to hallucinate a 40-hour work week the past year, 2.5 years? But
Yeah, it's like we're Morty when he got into that thing and he just like
yeah, the
lived like
game.
some average life. Yeah.
yeah. Then he comes out, he's like talking about the same shit. No, but dude, I related so much because Tom Segura had the story about how he went to Joey Diaz's podcast and Joey Diaz gave him an edible, and then Tom Segura tried to drive out of there, and he like kept on passing his turn. And then after he passed it for like the 5th time, he was just like, "Oh fuck, I'm way too high." And he like pulled over. That was my experience where it was like I had the map, like the GPS on my phone to walk back to school. It was like a 10-minute walk maybe or 15-minute walk. And dude, I just kept missing my turns. Like I kept every time I looked down at the map, I'd think I was going
past him.
It just kept saying rerouting. Like every time I would look down at my phone, it'd be like rerouting. I was like, what the fuck? Dude. Yeah. And by the time I ran up to I found our campus after like probably 45 minutes. And dude, my heart was pounding so hard. Every heartbeat sounded the way I've described it in the past is every single beat sounded like the sound of when a garbage truck sets down a dumpster really hard, and it goes like every beat was like that, like in my ears, like in my head. Just fucking yeah. And then you remember the rest. I went to my room, and I went to our dorm, and I and freaked out, and may or may not have made a couple phone calls because I thought everything was over.
It's all ogre.
Yeah.
Shrek was knocking down our door.
Dude, that was my thinking during that. I was like, dude, I'm gonna be like in a wheelchair, just like I'm gonna be like Hector from Breaking Bad. Like, holy shit, dude. I'm gonna be like the guy with with the bell, just fucking ding, ding, ding my whole life. And then I woke up, dude. That was too loud. I woke up, I was fine. Felt completely normal. Yeah. But I have not smoked. I have not touched any drug since then, for that matter, besides alcohol and nicotine. I guess you can count those, but no drugs. No, in the colloquial use of the word drugs, I have not touched since that day.
You became a cultive personality.
Yeah, dude, I became straight edge society, bro, as I sit here and puff on a cigar and drink wine.
Yeah.
I became 1/3 straight edge. Well, you know what I found out too, though? Straight edge apparently includes no promiscuous sex as well.
So is CM Punk married?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, well, good for him.
But yeah, a little late for that. So I guess one.
How lame that is!
Yeah.
What a lame thing.
Yeah. So I have one out of 4. I got 1 out of 4 that I'm straight edge on drugs.
Yeah.
Too late on everything else, but
straight edging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lame-o. CM Punk's lame.
He was straight edging.
If that's a part of if that's really part of it, CM Punk is a chump.
You're like the
Chad. He was so angry all the time.
You're like right. He's like, Vince, I have to come.
Give me my title shot.
Vince,
WrestleMania 223 is my day to be able to come. Come on.
Punk, we have to talk. Yeah, what's up, Vince? You gotta stop having boners during your matches. Vince, these fucking shorts, these tights, rub up against me. I can't help it. I haven't come in 10 years, Vince. I feel like non-wrestling fans don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah. And maybe at least maybe we're converting some folks to wrestling because for people listening, um, wrestling is going to continue to be an ever growing part of this podcast,
Yeah,
for better or worse. So embrace filmmaking and wrestling.
yeah. It goes hand in hand. I mean, it's media, Film
Yeah.
tangent sounded like a better title than media tangents, but that's really what this podcast is
It
when you
is a
think
better
about it.
time.
But film is the
Media
main.
tangents sounds like a weird podcast.
Yeah, it sounds stupid, but film. Film is my voice cracked. Film is the main thing. But that's my Halloween story, everybody. That was the scariest Halloween of my life
Yeah.
for sure.
I have very few Halloween stories because as a person who didn't grow up in this country, I really only have like a handful. But I feel like the funniest one for me is when I was a kid. My brother and I or when we were like teenagers, like maybe like 11 or 12, my brother and I bought extremely scary masks. Like when you when you go to the store, like and you look for the scariest, creepiest masks you could find, we bought those masks.
Uh-huh.
And then there were some kids that were visiting our home, I remember. And and it was like dark already, it was like nighttime, and it was like Halloween day, I believe. Um, these kids had just arrived and they were still like in their car. My brother and I came up from behind the car. Each one of us went from one direction,
Hell yeah.
and there was a little boy in the car with his parents, and we just like attacked the windows. Like we just like was screaming and pointing our masks in it. I mean, and that boy
Oh hell yeah, dude.
lost it. I mean, that kid was screaming,
Yes.
crying, hyperventilating.
Oh
We felt bad
man.
after the fact, but it was like one of those things that you do when you were a kid, and you're like, "Oh, this is funny," and we laughed, and then
Oh
we felt
yeah.
bad, and then we laughed anyway. Then we laughed after feeling bad. We got off the feeling bad hump pretty quickly.
I used to love doing that. I used to love scaring people on Halloween, like when I was a kid, because you get like when you're young, like age 5 through 9, it's like fucking candy, candy, candy. Like that's what Halloween's all about,
Mhm.
I mean, my dad introduced us to Halloween when I was like 5 years old. We started doing the like, putting out the decorations first week of October, playing like spooky music, horror movie soundtracks, Halloween songs, shit like that. But the actual day of Halloween, right? Ages 5 to 9, it's like candy. Dude, then when I got to like 10 to 13, 14, it was about scaring the shit out of people.
It was about carnage.
Yeah.
Rampage.
Yeah, and then 15
and candy also.
Yeah, and then 15 through forever is just about getting drunk and
right.
But age 10 to like through 13, man, it was just about scaring the shit out of people. But yeah, I used to like, what I would do was I would like sit on my porch, right? And like I'd be in a full costume and mask and everything, and I'd pretend to be a mannequin. Like I'd sit down with a bowl of candy, and then when the kids came up to get the candy, I'd be like, "Bah!" Like scare the shit out of them.
Oh jeez.
But I would discriminate, like if there was a real little kid and he came up, I would just be like, "Happy Halloween," and he would kind of like just, like jump a little bit. But I was like, it was like you gotta know your audience. But
you do. Yeah, it's like there's certain people. It's like you don't want to pick on a kid with his grandmother. It's like, oh, this is this is how things go horribly wrong.
Oh yeah.
But you pick your audiences.
Yeah, but then then I remember 13, 14, like middle school age. Like my friends and I, dude, we'd do the whole spook trail, man. We'd get like a chainsaw, with no chain, of course, and just fire that fucker up, and then, dude, trick or treaters would come around the side, go to the door to get the candy, just come out at them from the bushes.
Oh my god!
Fucking the best. Those are the days, man. And now Now it's just
Pretty wild
about,
that you guys were doing that. You guys were doing that. You guys were going above and beyond.
dude. Yeah, man. Yeah, we took Halloween seriously, man. But
Dude. What's Halloween about for folks like us in our mid-20s?
I mean, it's about getting drunk and same as it's been for the past few years, I guess. Just
Yeah.
get fucked up and try to get lucky, I guess.
Halloween lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope for those of you guys that are spending maybe a more quiet Halloween, if you're listening to this when this comes out on the day, um, thank you for spending Halloween with us, man. Crack a beer, get some wine if you have that, or just enjoy yourself listening to our lovely selves talk about horror movies.
Yeah. Happy Halloween, everybody. What we're
Happy
going to be
Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, happy Halloween. What we're going to be doing today is, as you may have seen from the title, the description. First of all, before we forget, like and subscribe, hit that bell notification so you're notified every time an episode comes out and so you don't miss special episodes like this. And then check us out on Apple Podcasts. Am I forgetting anything, Edward?
No, that would greatly appreciate us. That's one of those things where it's like, like when you're just watching YouTube videos, you hear people just kind of say these things, but it really does help people out because it makes us, even for folks like us who are just doing this for fun, and just kind of to be able to just hang out and talk about things. Even for us, it's kind of cool knowing that you guys are engaged and being able to hit either the like button or commenting or hitting the bell for notifications. It really does go a long way.
Yeah. Just don't comment wondering why we didn't
No.
post the full movie because we
If you do,
we
we'll make fun
will
of you.
roast you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we will roast you.
we will
If you
roast
want
you.
to, you can go ahead and actually comment that if you want to, just to get a roast from us.
Mhm.
Try to be creative if you do, so that we can actually also
Yeah.
be creative with you.
That could be a running joke within the Film Tangents community. Like, Cumtown has the whole, like, I'm gay thing where, like, their fans would just comment, like, da-da-da-da-da, whatever their comment was, and then also, I'm gay, right?
Yeah.
That was, like, Cumtown's thing. So that could be our
Yeah.
thing, right? Like, where the fuck's the full movie? Well, I hate these
Yeah.
fake links,
Yeah, no, I'm down for that. That sounds great. Guys,
Yeah.
let's make it happen. Come on.
Yeah, we don't take anything seriously over here on the Film Tangents podcast.
No.
We're not scholars of film. We're well, we might be outside of the internet, but we're just fuckers here. But,
Yes. We are. all that being said, let's get into the topic at hand, and that is our countdown of our top 10 favorite horror movies. Why don't you kick us off, sir?
All right, I'll kick us off. So this week we're doing Edward and I are doing our top 10 horror movies of all time. And that's our Halloween special, folks. So coming in at number 10 is, for me, going to be the Japanese horror classic, The Ring, or Ringu. Yeah.
Ringu. Yeah.
This is a 1998 Japanese supernatural psychological horror film. Most of you listening have probably seen the American version of The Ring. I think they're both great. I think the Japanese Ring and the American version are great. I actually give them both 9s out of 10. But I think I would have to say I prefer by a small but nevertheless a small but meaningful margin, we'll say. Prefer the Japanese version because the Japanese version, I think the American version of The Ring has a better script and has a better, from what I remember, has the better sort of handles the mystery a little bit better. But the Japanese version, I would say, takes the cake as far as craft goes and how scary it is as well. I think the Japanese version's a lot scarier. Because of the use of silence, I would say. So like a big difference, if you watch the American version, take two of the same scene, the same scene from the American version and the Japanese version, right? Where the woman sits down, sees the videotape for the first time, then gets the phone call, right? Not the opening scene, but the main character, right? So in the American version, played by Naomi Watts. In the American version, she sits down, watches the video, the phone call comes in, and they add in like some music and shit, like some creepy, forbidding music, ominous music in there. The Japanese version makes the decision to just stay completely silent and just leave us in complete silence. And from what I remember in that scene, they film it at a wide angle as well, so your eyes are just always searching the background, all the corners for something. Ringu also has one of my favorite spooky scenes of all time, and I use the word spooky on purpose. It's just a very like kind of goosebumps, classic, almost Halloween feeling kind of scene. It's one of my favorite horror scenes of all time. It's when they've if you haven't seen the movie, basically the concept is you see a videotape with a ring on it, then you get a phone call that tells you in 7 days you will die. And then you get haunted by the ring girl, who is similar to the grudge girl, just this evil, malevolent spirit, vengeful spirit, right? And so the whole movie, the two main characters have both seen the film, so they're both fucked. They have the countdown of 7 days. So as they're solving the mystery, they realize, okay, what we need to do is we need to locate the girl's remains, give them a proper burial so her spirit will be at rest and not kill us. So they're down to the wire. They're like on the last day. If I remember correctly, it's like they have until midnight or something. And so they're digging at this well where her remains are. They're digging, right? And we get this montage of them digging, and then it cuts to the horizon, and the sun is setting. And then it cuts back to them, and they're digging. And then it cuts back to the horizon. And every time it cuts back to the horizon, the sun is getting lower and lower and lower and lower until it's just that thin, like, purple band across the horizon line that, like, the sun's, like, almost completely down. Just that ticking time clock. Beautiful scene. I love that scene. But it's a great, it's a classic. And it in those ways, in terms of craft, it blows the American version out of the water, really.
Yeah.
Because the American version too, it does that 2000s horror thing. The one thing I don't like about the American version, it does that 2000s American horror thing where everything looks green and blue, and it looks like Ozark, the show Ozark.
Yeah.
And the Japanese version, they just shoot it with warm lighting and stuff, and it's just better. You don't have to try so hard, you know. That doesn't make it scary, you know. Just those ugly color palettes, just makes it look ugly. So
I agree.
That's number 10, the Japanese Ring. And what is your?
That's a great choice, for sure. And as you know, I've seen both of those movies. I like both of those movies.
Yeah.
I saw the Japanese one at your request. Well, you still had the DVD, I remember.
Yeah.
And I do agree that it's definitely a step up. Obviously, you kind of miss Naomi Watts because she's also pretty good in that American one. But I mean, great choice for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. And on to your number 10, sir.
My number 10. I'm going to keep this spicy. This is surprising. My number 10 is a found footage film. One that people would say maybe reinvigorated things for found footage movies. You probably know where I'm going with this.
I think so.
Paranormal Activity. Okay. My number 10 is Paranormal Activity, the first one.
The first one.
And I say this.
Oh, we have a memory of that film.
Exactly. Like this is a strange movie. Like, came out 2007, supernatural horror film. Produced, written, directed, and shot and edited by Oren Peli. So this is like one of those this is like one of those like weird ones where it's, it became this like overnight sensation because it's such a strange movie because this is basically this stationary film where you're just watching this footage of this home. And the fascinating thing about this movie is that every time I've seen this movie, it's been impactful. And this is
Yeah.
one of those movies that I never go out of my way to watch. This is one of those movies that I've seen, I think, twice, if not three times.
Yeah.
One of them with you. And again, this is one of those movies that I don't revisit. I forget about the movie. This is one of those movies that actually it's like it benefits from you forgetting like
Yeah.
what actually goes on. And it lives in the supernatural, and I love supernatural horror. It's one of my favorite kind of horrors.
Yeah.
Just from the way that we've grown up like in this Western society with like the idea of like ghosts, and stuff like that, and apparitions. So this is like one of those movies that it's fascinating because it plays with your feelings of like safety. It plays with sacred things, like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, like with your sleep and like
Yeah.
with the feeling of like not having control over certain things. And it's just creepy, man. Like it's one of those movies that is just like creepy and unsettling, and it sends chills down your spine. And a lot of the movie, as you know, just works on that level.
Yeah.
Like 90% of this movie is just that, just cranking it up and cranking it up and cranking it up. Just this like unsettlingness and this just kind of like, oh, this is weird ghost creature thing, demon, whatever, in this people's house, and it's like just doing random things, bumping things in the night. One of the creepiest scenes to me, and I have a vivid memory of this, is, when they put the powder on the floor
Yeah.
and then you just see the footsteps, it's like, oh God, like that stuff like that always really works with me because it's just the power of you using your own imagination takes you so far with movies. And this is one of those movies that, despite the fact that the sequels have sucked and there's like 20 sequels, you know, this is one of those movies that just 100% works. And to this day, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest scare I've ever had watching a movie,
Yeah.
and you were there.
Oh, dude.
You both you and me screamed
Yeah.
as loud as we humanly could.
Yeah. Oh man, every time, dude, I told that story to my sister like a week or two ago, and she was wheezing, laughing so hard.
Really?
Yeah, it's during that ending scene where the woman leaves the room. I can't remember in what context, and then the husband chases after her. She gets dragged out, I think.
Yeah.
The husband chases after her, and then dead silence because the whole movie is just silence. You're just waiting for like it, you're right. It just gets under your damn skin.
It does.
And then the
'Cause
husband just flies into the room, gets
exactly,
thrown
'cause
into the room.
The movie just asks for such a level of investment,
Yeah.
And as long as you're willing to kind of engage with the movie and like the ghost element, if you are able to suspend your disbelief with that, then you're in.
Yeah.
You're committed to that film.
Yeah.
And that moment just is prolonged to such an extent that you just find yourself like inching forward and inching forward and inching forward till the point that it feels like your face is right in front of the television. You're just waiting.
Yeah.
And this guy just comes in flying and crashes into the camera. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah. And you and I both just, fuck.
Yeah. And then even after that, there's payoff. I don't want to spoil it for anybody listening. Go ahead and watch these movies. But this is a gratifying film,
Yeah.
And I'm putting it at my top 10 because it's not, like top of the echelon, like filmmaking, cinematography, storytelling, but it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
One of the biggest like jump scare scream moments of my life.
Yeah.
So it's here. And so that's my top 10. What you got? What's your number 9, sir?
Yeah. And while we have like a few more seconds on that film, I'm watching, like, I'm timing us here just so we don't get way too off course, like if I have something additional to say or you do, but yeah, I'll say, the whole idea of catching things on film while you're sleeping, terrifying idea. That is
Yes.
that is horrific.
Regardless of whether it's a ghost or somebody living in your walls, like, it's
Anything.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they have the whole squatters thing. They've caught squatters on camera. That shit's
Mhm.
terrifying. The
Mhm.
creepypasta, the rake,
Mhm.
that element's baked
Mhm.
into that story. That's a
Mhm.
very scary concept. I would
Yeah.
say for me, Paranormal Activity 3, I think got me a little more than the first
Yeah,
one,
the
actually.
third one's also great.
The
The
third one's very
first and third
scary.
one are good. First and third are good.
Yeah. So moving on to number 9.
Mhm.
Number 9, I have the Australian horror film from 2008, Lake Mungo. This
Mhm.
is a 2008 Australian psychological horror film written and directed by Joel Anderson. This is not a very well-known horror film, but in the horror community, it's fairly well regarded. Um, I mean, I know that it's it's got critical acclaim. People who have seen this film it gets love from the horror community, but as far as the mainstream goes, not as
Mhm.
well known. But Lake Mungo, um, basically the plot concerns a girl named Alice. So the plot is basically Alice drowns while swimming, and her family begins experiencing inexplicable events in their home. The family hires a parapsychologist whose investigation unveils Alice's secret double life and leads them all to Lake Mungo.
Mhm.
Now, this film is a mockumentary as well, so sort of a close cousin to the found footage genre.
Mhm.
I actually prefer mockumentaries. I think that if there were to be another, and I doubt it, but if there were to be another explosion of the found footage genre, my response would be, hang on, let's actually hold on to those and let's do mockumentaries. Let's have that be the next big horror subgenre. Because it's a
Mhm.
close cousin of found footage, and you could argue that found footage films are mockumentaries, but
Mhm.
when we say mockumentary, it's like a documentary. It's supposed to be, it's a finished documentary, but it's fictional. It's not real. And
Mhm.
horror mockumentaries are actually a great device. I haven't seen that many of them, but I like that trope. I
Mhm.
enjoy that subgenre. And Lake Mungo is the best one that I've ever seen out of the horror mockumentaries. This film, similar to what you're saying about Paranormal Activity, has a moment in it, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but there is a moment in this film that scared me so bad. I watched this alone during lockdowns when COVID first happened,
Ooh. Yeah.
by myself in the first floor of my parents' house. You know what I'm talking about. The
Mhm.
bottom floor of my parents' house,
Mhm.
in that basement area, on that, there's that living area, the library or whatever. I was down there watching it, lights off, by myself. I really wanted to get scared. There's a moment in Lake Mungo that scared me so bad. The only way I could describe it is I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I felt my soul fucking prairie dog out of
Oh my
my
god.
body. Like, you know how the fucking
Yeah.
prairie dogs come up and then they go down
Yeah.
real quick? That's what my
Yeah.
soul did, dude. Like, there's a moment in Lake Mungo that had me in abject terror, because
Mhm.
it's similar to Paranormal Activity, where it's toward the end too, where they've stretched that rubber band as
Mhm.
far as it can go, as far as it can possibly go before breaking, and they just snap that bitch back right in your face. Scared me so bad. And the whole movie building up to it is just so creepy, man. As you find out, as the description says, about Alice's double life, how
Mhm.
she had secrets in her past that they start to uncover.
Mhm.
As the family starts to catch her ghost on camera at night in their house, wandering the backyard. And they're trying to communicate with her, figure out what's going on. They're interviewing the family, and they're interviewing neighbors, and they're uncovering this mystery of, hey, what was going on in her life? What may have what led up to this? Did she commit suicide? Was
Mhm,
this drowning accidental, or did she kill herself?
mhm,
And it's just masterful. And this is one of those films. It's like Paranormal Activity. If you put it on, you buy in, and you invest into it, it will pay off,
yeah.
as it did for me. And be warned: if your soul leaves your body while you watch this film, make sure you catch it, because make sure you catch it and put it back in, because this movie might take your fucking soul.
Hmm.
That's all I'll say. And that's number
I
9.
still gotta see this movie.
Yeah,
Huh.
it'll scare the shit out of you, dude.
I gotta see this movie. I gotta see this movie. Ooh, because you know that that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, I hope I've sold it. And it's great
Yeah, I just
story
sold
though
it.
too. It's not just like Paranormal Activity. I feel like it's, at the end of the day, Paranormal Activity is about just really getting under your skin, but there's not
Hmm.
really a philosophical sort of. There's not a thematic level to
Hmm.
that film
Hmm.
necessarily. I mean, there's themes. Any story has themes, but there are thematic elements. But there's not a real kind of like philosophical take in those films. And Lake Mungo being a mockumentary, it also gets the wheels turning a little bit as well in
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
mind. So there's story there as well. That's
Right.
really good.
Right.
Other than a couple, there's like one story point that kind of bumped for me a little bit, where I was like, I don't know if that's so believable. But other than that, good, really good.
Hmm. No, you sold it, dude. I mean, you sold that movie for sure.
Check it out, man.
Well, for me, my number 9, it's going to be a movie that you've seen, and it's The Witch.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, The Witch, the 2015 movie, folk horror. The movie that started I guess the trajectory that Mr. Robert Eggers has been in since the movie came out. If you remember when the movie came out, it was the Vivitch, because it's just like two V's.
Yeah.
But for those who are not don't know about this movie, this is folk horror film, and it takes place. I think it's like in the 1600s, and it's all about this family, this dad and his two sons, and or rather his daughter, his baby, his son, and his wife. And the movie starts with there being some kind of like religious disputes. Something goes on with the family in the town, and they get banished. So
Mhm.
they're banished, and they build their own little new house next to this forest, right? And so the rest of the film then becomes this kind of like it's kind of like this slow build up to what's going on with this family. They get banished, for these religious reasons. They get pushed out. They have to make a home. They're in this next to this forest. The forest, a bunch of noise comes out of the forest. The forest looks daunting and huge and intimidating. And this is a film. I don't know what it was about this movie, but this is a movie that it took me 3 tries to watch.
Mhm.
I tried watching it by myself the first time, and I couldn't do it. I could not get past like the first like 20 minutes of this movie. First
Why?
15, 20 minutes. I couldn't get past them because if I don't know if you remember this, but this movie, after it introduces where the family is, it does that whole peekaboo thing where she's out.
Yeah.
The main character, the main character's out. The main character's name is Thomason. Thomason's out by like in this tall grass near the edge of the forest, and she's like playing this peekaboo game with her little baby brother, and she's just closing her eyes and opening them, closing her eyes and opening, and the film's kind of playing with this and playing with the baby's expressions, like looking at her, and that unsettled me. Just that, just watching the child's expressions and then cutting to the child being gone and
Yeah.
then cutting to like this like creature, just kind of running across this forest unsettled me. Couldn't do
Oh
it.
yeah.
I put it away. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I can't do this. The second time, watched it with my brother, and he and I got 30 minutes into this film, and then we were both like, "Okay, let's stop this." We're both of us like, "I don't really," it was like, I'm not into this." Like I'm not, a huge horror movie guy. Let's stop this. And the second time we got past that, and we got past the lady, because then she takes the child, and then you have this like slow zoom into the witch's like house.
Yeah.
It's like decrepit old hut, and you just hear this like sounds like pop pop pop, like you just hear this sound like she's smashing something. You cut into it, and there's just like this old lady,
Yeah.
and everything's dark, just candles, and she's like rubbing blood on herself. So remember that we got to there, and we're like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. Because it's like, dude, to me, for my money, one of the scariest first halves of a film. Like one
Yeah.
of the scariest like first 30 minutes. I mean, insanely like to me that was just like so insanely scary. The third time that I watched it was when I was able to actually get through it. I think the third time I watched it like in class, or you and I watched it together, one of the two.
Yeah.
Um, and by that point, the effects of it had worn off. But the thing that lasts to me with that film is that to this day, one of the strongest first impressions I've ever had with a movie,
Yeah.
and the only time I ever stopped watching a horror movie. Like, the whole time, I was like, I don't think I can do this on my own.
It's a
Like,
great
the only time
honor.
I was like, this is too much. And the ending of the movie doesn't let up because it's just like playing with this religious themes, witches and the devil and the goats. And I've always been fascinated by the whole relation with goats and the devil and what's going on and what's not. That the
Yeah.
movie explores that. A lot of like really unsettling imagery, a lot of messed up stuff happens in this movie. Um, yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, check it out. If you feel up to it to watch it on your own, the environment for me when I first watched it was dark room on my own.
Yeah.
So if it sounds like you can do it, take a shot at it because I do think it's one of the great horror movies we've had over the past 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a must see for horror fans, that's for sure. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's a great film. I mean, it's super. The craft that went into it is incredible. I think the only problem that I had with the movie, I think, was just the not necessarily the pacing, but I think there was just a lot of I would hesitate to, I try not to. If a film's great and I can see that greatness, I hesitate to call it boring, But and I hesitate to say slow, because then people, when you say that, especially in horror, people think like, oh, this guy just likes Freddy versus Jason, he doesn't know what he's talking about. No, I love great horror, and one of my favorite horror movies of all time, which we'll get to later, people have called slow and boring, and I disagree. But for me, there were just parts that kind of lost me in this movie, but I agree with everything you said at the same time in terms of it's very unsettling. It is a very unsettling film at the same time. I think I feel a similar way about The Witch that I do to Skinamarink, I guess. Of course, Skinamarink is like heinously slow, but I wouldn't compare them at the same. It's not quite apples to apples, but I think you guys get the point of what I'm trying to say. But good pick, dude.
What you got?
Okay, so we're on to number 8. My number 8 horror film of all time is going to be the original Evil Dead film.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
So I had to watch clips last night on YouTube because I was torn between 1 and 2. Because I love Evil Dead 1 and 2, both the originals. They're both fantastic. Just it's a subgenre that I've created in my head that I call carnage horror, right? Carnage horror to me is like Evil Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, I haven't seen it, but The Devil's Rejects, shit like that. It's like carnage horror. You come to see the gore and the freaking, bloodbath. It's not necessarily torture porn. That's a different subgenre. That's like a whole different thing. But it's like carnage horror. It's like survival meets gore meets, creatures or villains or whatever it is, right? And I had to choose between 1 and 2. And Evil Dead 1, anyone who's not familiar with Evil Dead, which few and far between, probably. I think we're all familiar with these films at this point, especially with there being a resurgence of this franchise at this point. But basically, The Evil Dead, it's about as simple as it gets. I mean, Ash Williams, his girlfriend, and three pals hike into the woods to a cabin for a fun night away. They find an old book, the Necronomicon, whose text reawakens the dead when it's read aloud. The friends inadvertently release a flood of evil and must fight for their lives or become one of the evil dead. Ash watches his friends become possessed and must make a difficult decision before daybreak to save his own life. In this, the first of Sam Raimi's trilogy. So that's the plot of 1 and 2, because 2 is like a soft reboot almost, but it's also a sequel. It's really weird. Well, a soft reboot is a sequel, but anyway. But 2 goes more in the comedy direction. 2 is, the way I describe 2 is Evil Dead 2 is like an R-rated Tim Burton film. That's the way I describe it. That's also the way I describe Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. That's neither here nor there. The first one, I think I just prefer that one a little bit more. I prefer that straight horror approach of the first one. It's really incredible to think that this was a movie that a bunch of kids, 20-something-year-olds, if that, may have even been 18. I don't remember how old Sam Raimi was when they made this film, went into the woods and made this film on a shoestring budget, made it look so good, had the craziest just gore effects, the craziest camera work, the movement of the camera as people are getting chopped up and dismembered and running around trying to dodge their possessed evil friends. It's incredible. This Sam Raimi was a prodigy. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. He was a prodigy. I love the original Evil Dead. There's just certain shots in it too that are just amazing. Probably my favorite shot in the film, if we're getting technical here, is when there's a wide shot, and in the background of the shot, Ash he's doing something. I can't remember if he's trying to open a door, but he's struggling to do something. And all of a sudden, in the foreground, one of his possessed friends, who you thought was dead, just does that Undertaker sit-up, like right into the camera. Just goes like, ah. It's a beautiful shot. I love that shot. That's the shot that I think of every time I think of this movie. And it spawned a great franchise. And for my money, there's never been a bad film in this franchise. There's been 5 movies in this franchise: Evil Dead 1 and 2, Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead remake, which is also fantastic. Actually had a nightmare about that movie maybe a month or two ago, by Fede Alvarez. It's a fantastic, it fills those shoes and then some. And Evil Dead Rise was pretty good as well. I saw that in theaters early this year. So that's my number 8, The Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead. You know that I still have to see that movie, right?
The first one?
Yeah.
Oh, you've only seen 2, huh?
I've only seen 2. Yeah.
First one's great. I like the more straightforward horror approach of the first one.
Yeah. I
like
movie,
the different. They had to go in that different direction in the second one, otherwise it would have been a complete just rehashing. So I'm glad. I love the variety, but if I had to choose one, it's got to be the first one.
All right. I gotta watch that film. I do, and I hope that in me watching that film, I'm able to like get as much out of it. I feel like I hope that it's able to live up to, because that I really like the Fede Alvarez one.
Yeah.
So I hope that it's able to be as good, if not better. I know that's like weird to say because the new one is like the new one, but that new one's pretty fucking great.
It is. Just picture an 80. If you the Fede Alvarez, just picture that, but in the 80s, and that's the first one. Pretty much it.
Well, for me. The next for me, for you,
Bane.
For me, the next one, number 8 for me is the Spanish found footage film, horror film, Wreck.
Okay.
directed by co-written and directed by Jaume Balaguero and Paco Plaza.
Have not seen it.
This
Still
is
got to watch it.
this is a fascinating film because this is and this is also the reason why it's making it to my eighth spot in this film. This is a zombie movie. Like and it's interesting because like zombie movies for me are always kind of like more low tier horror because it's just kind of more existential. Like, oh, the world is full of zombies. But this is a fascinating one because it's the whole premise of this film is that there's this reporter who just shows up to this building. It's She shows up to the building. It's like this woman named Angela. She's just reporting. It's just a news coverage, and she's just there with her cameraman, and they're just there in the night shift in Barcelona, and they're just trying to document a series called like While You're Sleeping. So they're just following along with like firefighters. That's really the whole idea here. And in doing that, they end up having to go to this building, this kind of tall building with a bunch of stories. And something breaks out in the building. Nobody can get out. They're keeping everybody inside the building. And it's like, oh, lo and behold, it's a zombie movie. But this film is fascinating and I honestly feel like I've like lowballed this movie because it's a 7. Like I've kind of been escalating my ratings with my list because my lowest rated movie in this list is Paranormal Activity, and then The Witch, and then this movie and The Witch have the same rating on my list. I have rated both of them a 7. Um, in this film, I think I like rated this film too low because this film is actually like really impactful in how it handles zombies and how it handles itself with this like found footage idea of this reporter girl that is just trying to document everything that's happening in there with her cameraman together with the firefighters going up. It's like this weird like The Raid because they just keep going up and up and up because they're
Okay.
looking for answers, looking for what's going on. People are sick. Why are they sick? Other people are getting infected. And this is one of those movies where the zombies are like quite violent, reminiscing of 28 Days Later.
Okay.
And then ultimately, this movie climaxes in a very unexpected way. Like it reaches like an ending that you would not expect based off of being kind of like, okay, this is just a zombie movie where people just keep getting infected and keep getting infected and things just keep getting worse and keep getting worse and keep getting worse and they're trapped in this building and they can't get out. And it just reaches this like apex where you're like, where can this movie go? And for my experience, and I think the experience of a lot of people with this film, is that then it goes from just being existential and claustrophobic and like, oh my god, what are we going to do, to then just becoming to then just reaching that place of just being completely just like unsettling
Yeah.
and chilling. Like the ending of this movie is quite chilling. I won't spoil it because that's kind of part of the big selling point of the first watch of this film. But I do have to say that it's very effective in just kind of making you feel that way, making you feel unsettled, making you have that kind of creepy chilling feeling on inside of you, and just making you feel helpless. That's ultimately the number one thing. It's just like these feelings of helplessness, and I feel like that maybe it's kind of like a trend with the movies that I'm talking about, because ultimately for me, when a horror film is able to make you feel both unsettled and chilled, and then match that with just this feeling of like uncertainty and helplessness, then that's just kind of a winning combo for me all the time. And this movie manages to do that. And it just manages to inch out The Witch, because it was really between those two movies, 7 and 8, since I rated them the same thing. But yeah, this is a big recommend for me. We almost watched this for this week's podcast. I know that we watched Gonjiam Asylum, but it was between those two movies for me. But this is me saying, watch that movie. I think it's great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got to check it out, man. It's been on my watch list for a little while. It's definitely yeah, it's a priority in terms of horror. I gotta make it a priority in terms of my horror watch list. All right, moving on to, we're on number 7. My number 7 horror film of all time is going to be the original House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price from 1959.
Not seen that movie.
It it's a fun because I had to put on here, so my top 10, it's a mix of what I find scariest, but also just
Mhm,
favorite. It's not all
mhm.
horror to me is not all about the scares. Like, did it scare you? It's
Right,
just, is it a good
right.
film? Is it good? Does it have good atmosphere, good technique,
Mhm,
good story, good characters? And House on Haunted Hill has almost everything for me. It's a great classic horror film. It's my favorite Vincent Price performance to this day, I think. I just watched the other day The Pit and the Pendulum for the first time, another Vincent Price classic, Edgar Allan Poe adaptation. And that was great. He's great in that, but dude, Vincent Price just destroys in this movie. But the original House on Haunted Hill, basically, it concerns a group of people who are, it's so much easier just to read this off the internet, read the log line. A millionaire offers $10,000 each to five people who agree to be locked in a large, spooky rented house overnight with him and his wife. So it actually is like that classic idea of like, oh, would you spend a night in a haunted house for $10,000? I think everybody's been asked that question at least once in their life. And this movie actually, back in 1959, uh, did just that. It did that idea. It had all these characters say, "Hey, $10,000, I'll spend the night in this supposedly haunted mansion," and it's great. And Vincent Price's character, he plays this millionaire or billionaire. I think he's just a millionaire in the film, and his wife. He's a bastard in this movie. You get the idea at the beginning of the movie that this guy's just a creep. And when he's talking to his wife, him and his wife have this weirdly abusive relationship where they, there's a scene where they're both in the bedroom of the mansion, and they're like, about to go downstairs and greet their guests. And she's like, "Do you remember when I poisoned you that one time?" And he's like, "Huh, how could I forget?" And she's like, "Wasn't that so much fun?" And he's just like, "Oh, how," he's like, "I'd kill you if I knew I could get away with it." And it's just like this weird, just freaky, weird relationship that they have.
mhm.
Um, where but it's also like really playful in a way. So they kind of add some humor to it as well, where you're just like, oh my god, these people are talking about killing each other and then just kind of laughing about it. But and then the cast of characters is really interesting. Like, one of them is a psychologist who just is an extreme skeptic. Two of the people are kind of like, or three of the people, I should say, are like kind of agnostic. And then one of the guests, claims to have been there before, and he's like totally convinced that ghosts are real. And he's just, I don't remember his reason for being there other than the money, because he's very, like, these ghosts are real and we're all going to probably be dead by the morning. Um, Very campy film. I don't want to sell this as if it's like some kind of, like, it's, if you're going into it thinking like this is going to be like, the original Haunting, or, you know, The Exorcist or something. It's not. It's very much a, 1950s Vincent Price, campy horror film. But that's why I
Mhm.
love it. It's just that classic, it's a dose of Halloween straight to your veins, man. It's just that classic, you know, spooky kind of film. And so I had to take a sip of water there for a second. There's like some great shots too. One of my favorite shots of the film, the one that keeps coming back to me when I think about the film, is there's this great shot where Vincent Price's character, his wife, is like walking down the hallway, this like long corridor, and then at the end of the hall, all of a sudden you see Vincent Price's shadow on the wall like emerge, and she sees it, and then there's this musical note like dun, and she kind of runs into her room. And it's just this great little moment that I've always loved, because, his shadow too, you could tell it's Vincent Price. It's almost like Alfred Hitchcock, where you recognize him as a silhouette. Anyway, that's one of my favorite moments of the movie. But Give it a watch if you like old campy horror. It's fun. Fun fact: I do believe that this film inspired Alfred Hitchcock to make Psycho as well.
Mm,
Uh,
okay.
but yeah, highly recommend if you like old classic chiller horror with Vincent Price, who has the greatest voice of all time, bar none.
Okay. Well, for me, the we're at number 7, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me now, number 7, I'm going to, same as you, I'm going to go a little bit older films, and not necessarily scary movies. This is kind of more so like a stylistic choice for me. Um, and this is my vampire movie for this list. Um, I have Nosferatu the Vampire, the 1979 film written and directed by Werner Herzog.
Okay.
This is a film that I first watched. I mean, I had always been fascinated by this, by the Nosferatu character itself, but also by this film. I first watched this movie just doing research in writing like a horror story, and this I watched before this one. I watched the first one, the first Nosferatu, which is actually pretty good. And then I watched this one, and this movie kind of blew me away because this film, as it goes with the Herzog, it just has really kind of like captivating cinematography and just really captivating scenes and makeup and behaviors from the characters. It just really it's really just like shots and scenes and the and landscapes in this film that I remember and can think about vividly to this day. It's just kind of a beautiful movie, honestly. And even the poster for this movie is great. I love the poster for this film too. And for those that don't know what this is about, this is basically like a Dracula. Dracula. It's like a German Dracula. That's the whole thing with Nosferatu. Um, and the idea here is the same one. It's with the guy, whatever his name is, Jonathan. Is with the guy that gets like a deal to do a job and go see the count, and he goes and meets the count, and it's like, oh, this guy's creepy. And the fascinating thing about Nosferatu that I love more so than I love kind of that I than I did kind of just the normal average like Dracula mythos
Mm.
is that with Nosferatu, he's quite the the creature. I
Yeah.
mean, this is like, I mean, he looks like a rat. He looks like a human rat. He's
Yeah.
like bald, grotesque looking, with huge pointy ears, pale skin,
Yeah.
sharp. He has this like two sharp front teeth that are just unsightly, and the very, very, very like long, like yellow, like nails. Like the guy just looks like a creature. Like he looks like what you would imagine somebody would look like if they've been living for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
He just looks like he's just hanging on
Yeah.
to life.
They got the design for Salem's Lot as well, the movie
Yeah.
Salem's Lot. They totally
So
ripped that.
So this is one of those films for me that I just love this movie aesthetically. I love this movie for the story that it delivers and how it delivers that kind of classic tale. Um, and just also for what it adds to the whole kind of plotting, right? Even though it was kind of in the first one too, but the whole thing with it is as it goes that he sees a picture of his wife and he's like, well, I want this guy's wife. So I'm gonna leave him here, like imprisoned in my castle, and I'm gonna go and move in, and like try to get in with this woman. And this is just kind of a fascinating movie in that sense because he moves in, and when he moves in, the town just becomes bedlam. People lose their minds. People are going insane. People are out there doing like weird little dances in the streets. So then it becomes from this being like this peaceful like little town to just being just like depraved and disheveled, and nobody's out in the streets, or if they are on the streets, they're just like doing crazy things, singing and dancing and hullabaloo, and people are just dying. Because he comes in this boat that is initially filled with like hundreds of like, um, hundreds of guys that are bringing him in the boat. And the allegory with the film is kind of with it's kind of like this plague allegory where this Nosferatu character just brings death and plague. And the assumption from the authorities and the medics is just like, okay, I guess there's just a plague in the town, and it's not. They're not relating it to the fact that some weird, creepy rat man moved in, and that he brought with him a bunch of dirt and coffins and a bunch of rats.
Yeah.
So it kind of plays that way, and then he has that kind of classic, you know, dramatic ending where it's like both happy and sad because it's like, the vampire is defeated, and I know this is kind of spoilers, but I mean, it's the Dracula thing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what this is about. But it's like, oh, he's defeated, but at a great cost. And then you also have this kind of sad kind of doom at the end of it, because not only is he defeated, but then it also has the movie kind of leaves you with this feeling of like this is going to happen again, because then we kind of get introduced to now what's become a new vampire who's going to kind of take up the mantle after Nosferatu's died. So yeah, this is just one of those films for me that aesthetically I love it. This is one of those films that when you think about the movie, it's one of those that just makes you. It kind of brings in that sense of like doom, doom and gloom with it. But ultimately, the choice for me really is just more like an artistic choice, and it just being the best adaptation of this character in this story until we see whatever Robert Eggers is doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm excited for that.
I thought of that while you were talking. That's going to be really that's going to be a great film.
And that's why I'm so hyped for it too, because it's like I saw the classic, I saw the Werner Herzog version, which is to this date the best version of this movie. And I will see what this man's going to bring. I hope he's going to bring back the scares, because he kind of took a break from scary, because The Northman wasn't.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse wasn't that much. So we'll see what happens next.
I still have to see the original Nosferatu and this one too. They're both on my watch list. So, the ever-growing watch list. So
yeah.
All right. So on to number 6. Number 6 for me is going to be the original Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. I had to put it on there, man. It's a 10 out of 10 film for me. It's a masterpiece of cinema, not only horror, but just of cinema in general. The whole idea, because I was watching one of the Friday the 13th movies the other day, 2, and they were doing flashbacks to Friday the 13th 1 at the beginning of 2. And it's funny because in Friday the 13th, they try to do the Norma Bates kind of thing, Norman Bates' mother with Pamela Voorhees, and it fails spectacularly because once it's revealed that it's Jason Voorhees' mother, and it just becomes this kind of old lady in a grandma sweater wrestling around with the main character, it's not scary anymore.
Right.
In Psycho, the difference is in Psycho, the whole movie, you think, right, up until like there's the reveal, at the end of Act 2. This is a really old movie, so I'm going to talk about this as if everyone's seen it. And if you really don't want spoilers for a movie from 1960, it's not fair to say it's an old movie because there's just movies we all haven't seen, but it's a classic film, and I feel more vindicated in talking in spoilery terms. But, there's that whole reveal toward the end of the second act, beginning of the third act, that Norma Bates has been dead for, 10 years or something like that. She's buried in the cemetery, because the whole movie you think that it's Norman Bates' mother that's killing people and he's cleaning up after her. But it stays scary because you never see her. You only see fleeting glimpses of what looks like her that you later find out is just him in a wig. And you see these little fleeting glimpses of her, and you see her silhouette in the window, which is also really fucking creepy. And then there's the reveal at the end that he's keeping her stuffed corpse in the basement, which is a horrific scene. Of course, there's the classic shower scene. To this day, man, I mean, that scene sends chills up your spine.
Affects me, yeah.
I mean, because it's like, you're so vulnerable in the shower. I mean, it was brilliant at that time to do that scene because you are truly incredibly vulnerable in the shower, I love the soundtrack of the film, just those violins, those strings, man, they're freaking so creepy and so intense. And I love the twists and turns and the suspense. I love even before she ever gets to the Bates Motel. It's great. It's so suspenseful. I mean, Hitchcock. They don't call him the master of suspense for nothing. They're not just saying that for the hell of it. Like he really was the master of suspense because he just kept you on a freaking just hanging by a thread. You're with this character and she's stolen money, which is wrong, but you kind of also you're with her for the ride, so you kind of want to see her escape too. And then this overly insistent cop keeps following her around. He's on her case, and it's just it's very suspenseful even before the horror aspect of the film comes in. And then of course, the performance of Norman Bates is fantastic. And it's just it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. The whole scene of the main characters, the shower lady who you think is the main character, and then she's not halfway through the film or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When her sister is in the house, and then Norman Bates is coming up the steps, and she's got to hide, and she has to go and hide in the basement. Like that shit is creepy, man. It's creepy. It's a very creepy film. Despite it being from 1960 and black and white, it is a creepy film for that time, and it sends chills up my spine to this day.
Yeah.
So that's my number. What was that? Number 6. Psycho.
Yeah, that's one of those films that and I don't know when I saw this movie. I don't know if I saw it with you because I definitely saw it in college. But it's one of those films that I feel like I'm always kind of wanting a little bit more. The shower scene always gets me. And the scenes you talk about like always have kind of a bit of an impact for me. But it's one of those movies that it never reaches that point for me of feeling like I'm getting as much from this movie as other people are getting. Like it doesn't seem like to give me as much as I would like. But obviously it's a film that I respect a lot,
Sure.
And that and somehow I was expecting it to be on your list somewhere because I know that you really love this film.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I have it on my honorable mentions.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But for me, number 6, it's going to be Carrie by Brian De Palma.
That's in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, look at that. We're trading. The
Love
1976 movie, supernatural horror.
10 out of 10.
Based on like a Stephen King story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His first
this is
published novel.
Yeah, no, this is where my list now becomes like 9, 8, and 10 out of 10 movies. Just I guess a little bit rearranged in order of like I guess impact horror, less so like filmmaking prowess. Because this movie is a movie that I have out of 10, at a 9 at my on my Letterboxd. But you know how my ratings work. Any movie that I give an 8 to is kind of basically a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
But obviously classic film. I mean, it came out when 76, so classic movie, classic tale of just kid that's being bullied at school, and I mean, it's just horrible. Like I feel for this character, and every time I watch this movie, because it's like not only is this character being bullied at school, but she's being bullied at her home and harassed by her own mother,
Yeah.
Obviously this inspired a lot of different things, like with Black Swan and all this kind of like mother-daughter dynamic, like unhealthy dynamics in films.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. This is just one of those movies where you just suffer for this character because it's like, oh my God, this poor girl just wants to be able to go to school and be able to exist, and not have that be like a crime, So this is one of those films where you just relate to the character and their struggles so much because you're like, oh my God, man, like, okay, it's like, can a person fucking exist, and shit like that goes on to this day.
Yeah.
And then obviously you feel even worse for this character when they just kind of lull her into this false sense of security in the film just to destroy her again,
Terrible, dude.
So there's just a lot in this film, but there's also a lot of just creative choices that De Palma makes with the camera. De Palma, I mean, a visionary. I mean, the guy was doing stuff in film with the camera movement, with the lenses, with the transitions,
Yeah.
with the scenes and how they were set up and how things were being communicated. I mean, and this is a movie that for me to this day exemplifies his filmmaking prowess the most. Like he was just working at maximum frequency in this movie. I watched this movie the first time I watched this movie. I was like 9 out of 10. I was like,
Yeah.
amazing, you know.
The
I remember that I
dancing
put
scene
this,
with the camera
yeah,
work
the
and the
dancing scene,
dancing. Oh
yeah,
my god, it's
yeah.
amazing.
And I still take credit amongst our circles of reinvigorating like a reappraisal of this film. I remember that I
Yeah.
watched this film and I gave it a 9, and then everybody watched it after that and was like, actually, this is actually pretty fucking great.
Yeah, at
Like I
film
remember because
school. Yeah.
I had conversations with our peers, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, man, like, you made me watch that movie again, and it's great," you know. So I hope that to the listener, it makes you feel the exact same way. This is a film that's worth watching, and it's incredible to this date. It has not. Obviously, there's elements about it that are questionable in the society that we're living in, but this is a '70s film,
Mhm.
and if you take the movie for what it is, it stands near perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously it has a great ending that I won't spoil, but everything comes crumbling and crashing down, and people who need to get their comeuppance, and it's very satisfying and iconic as heck.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that's my
Definitely.
number six.
Definitely one of the best Stephen King adaptations too. I mean, it's up there
Hmm.
with Shawshank, The Shining, and Carrie.
Hmm.
Those are probably like the top three Stephen
Hmm.
King adaptations. Some might throw
Hmm.
Misery in there as well, but there's a lot of great King adaptations. But I love great Stephen King adaptations because I love Stephen King. Like,
I
he's a
know.
fantastic author, and
Yeah.
the great adaptations, I think, show that like, hey, we're taking this fantastic story and we're properly presenting it in this other medium of film, and it gives him I think his credit, the credit that
Hmm.
he deserves as a storyteller. But I agree 100%, man. Carrie is it's a it's a masterpiece, and you
Hmm.
will suffer with that character.
Yes.
It's like that movie May owes a lot to this
Hmm.
movie, and
Hmm. For
it's
sure. For sure.
I have the same feelings where you just want to give her a hug, man. It really is just like fuck.
Hmm.
It is terrible, but it fantastic film.
What's your
Um,
number five? Getting
number
into the big boys, the big
yep,
leagues.
yep. We're getting in the big leagues now. So number 5 for me is going to be the original or not original, but the first film, the first
I was
Insidious
I was
film.
wondering where this movie was gonna land for you in your
Yeah.
top five, huh?
Yep. So Insidious. Now it's my memory of this film. I remember as a kid when the commercials came on advertising this movie, and it looked scary as hell. And I just from watching the commercials, I couldn't get lipstick face demon's face out of my head.
Mm.
And then for years I didn't watch it because I mean when this movie first came out, I was like, what, 11? No, 12. Um, and I couldn't handle really scary movies back then. So, but I watched it, as a teenager for the first time, and I mean, it blew me away. It scared the shit out of
Mhm.
me. This is a movie that it's a legendary film. I mean, it scared a generation. I mean, this is our Poltergeist. This
Mhm.
is our Amityville horror, like, you know what I mean? I guess The Conjuring is more our Amityville horror, but this is like our Poltergeist when we're adults. You know, this is the haunted house film that scared the shit out of people.
Mhm.
More so than Poltergeist, I think, because I think Poltergeist is rightly in some ways looked at as more of a Hollywood kind of a little bit more kid friendly than most horror.
Mhm.
Maybe, I don't know. There's that Spielberg ET feel to it, I guess.
Yeah,
But that
exactly.
that lulls you into
Exactly.
a false sense of security, I think, with that movie. But anyways, this is about
Mhm.
Insidious. Insidious, it's a
James
great
Wan.
concept. I mean, I think it was Lee Wanell. Lee Wanell wrote the film, and I'm assuming maybe he came up with the idea.
Mhm.
as well. Maybe him and James Wan came up with it together. I don't really know, but I know Lee Wanell wrote it, and I read the script too, like back when I was first writing scripts, screenplays, and I mean, it's a fantastic twist on the haunted house genre because they definitely were coming at this from an angle of like, let's make a classic haunted house film, but put a creative spin on it. It concerns, basically this family living an ideal life. They're happy, and all of a sudden, their young son, I think he's like 10 years old or something, falls
Mhm.
into a coma and doesn't wake up. He falls into a
Right.
coma. There's no explanation. The doctors don't understand it. And the moment he falls into the coma, they start seeing spirits in their house.
Mhm.
They move, right? Still seeing ghosts. And they realize after a little while that these are not separate events. These are connected, and
Mhm.
there's of course, the classic line of this film, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son.
Right. Right.
And it was a fantastic idea, um,
Mhm.
and a great spin on the whole poltergeist idea of the little kid is lost in the ghost dimension and we got to rescue
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
Um, which I always thought was a great idea because it's like one of my favorite kind of phrases, quotes, whatever you want to call it, about storytelling is that problems that your character, if your character has problems that they can walk away from, your story's not interesting. And I love that line because it's so true. You got to make a story where your character has no choice but to face their problems head on, and that's what I love about the poltergeist plot and the updated version of that plot in Insidious is like,
Mhm.
we have no choice. We have got to save our kid.
Mhm.
And that means going into this ghost dimension and risking our very souls to rescue
Right.
our child, reaching down through the gates of hell and rescuing our kid. Um, and again, this is the movie that scared a generation. If you go on the internet and type in Reddit, what movie scared the shit out of you? What scene scared the shit out of you? Insidious is going to appear once or multiple times in every single thread. And
Absolutely.
for good reason. In my opinion, for good reason. So, Insidious, that's my number 5.
Tiptoe. What is it? What is it? Tiptoe through the what? What is it?
Tiptoe
What is
through the
it? That
tulips,
the
man.
tulips. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Scared a generation.
Yeah.
Made a generation
So
shit their pants.
yeah, no, so much to talk about that film. And I mean, for those of you listening who've seen Insidious, you know what scene I'm quoting by saying that.
Yeah.
The creepiest and most unsettling scene in that film.
Yeah.
It's what you know
The
because
little boy
it's
ghost
one
dancing.
right, right. Especially when you add the when you see it element of it. That then obviously
Yeah.
became like viral. People just sharing like, did you see that? Did you see that the boy was there? You
Yep.
know. Yeah, not enough has been said about this film. This film actually, like, I feel like people don't give this movie its flowers as much as they should,
No.
because this film is terrifying. You know.
This movie needs like a reassessment, sort of like the
Yeah.
way The Shining got, and you know, uh, certain other films famously have gotten like reassessments after.
Hmm.
I think Blade Runner was another one that got like a
Yeah.
reassessment,
Yeah.
um, culturally, and I think Insidious deserves a similar critical reassessment, which I think it
Yeah.
will get as our generation gets older.
No, and I mean you're pushing that wagon for sure. And I knew that this movie was gonna land somewhere in your list. I was like, I know Jake's gonna put
Yeah,
Insidious in
yeah.
there. But no, that's a great pick. As for me, number 5 is Audition, the
Oh man.
Japanese film, horror film directed by Takashi Miike, the Japanese auteur, based on the novel by Ryu Murakami.
Good pick, dude. Ooh.
And you and I saw this movie at school, like in the big theater. Um, For those of you who are not, I mean, it's weird talking about this film because I believe that this is one of those films where the less you know about what this movie's about,
Yeah.
the better. There's films like that that just work on you. Oh, just put it on, just watch the movie, put it on and watch the movie, and just see what you see.
It's a good example
But
of a low concept idea, I
yes,
think.
yes, but obviously the film's named Audition, and just to kind of give you guys a little bit of the premise, um, this is a film in which a man is. I think he like works for like some kind of advertising agency,
Yeah.
and they put out an ad,
Because he got
just like
broken up with by his girlfriend or something. He
exactly,
got dumped.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he puts out an ad, and the ad is just basically like saying like, oh, come out and you're gonna get a job from this. Like you're gonna get some kind of acting gig. But ultimately, he was kind of being he was just being facetious because the whole thing was just made up. The whole thing was just this like, oh, you'll come here and you'll be able to be in an ad, or we'll put you on some ad or some movie or something. But really the women were, unbeknownst to themselves, auditioning for this guy and his friend to basically be like, which one's going to be my girlfriend, like which one of these women am I going to just like you know lie to and then get them to be my girlfriend, but there's actually no job here. So even in those false pretenses, right there, you're like, okay, the main character here is a despicable person, because he's doing these things. And that's kind of just a general premise of the movie, and that's why it's called Audition.
Yep.
But then from there, it kind of escalates into, exploring like child abuse and trauma, and then it escalates further into violence and torture and you
Yeah.
know, I mean, some of these words you can't even say because ultimately it all kind of unravels, and it kind of it leaves you feeling, because then you have to grapple with the morality of everything, the morality of
Yeah.
the characters involved, regardless of who did what when in the film. You have to grapple with the morality of what's happening here. Is this fair? Are the things happening in this film okay?
Mm.
And however you come out feeling of this movie by the end, then that just goes to I guess um highlight, I guess, your interpretations of this film and
Mm.
who you were or how you approached it when you first watched it. If you think that the things that happened in this film were right or justified, and the movie just messes and plays with your sense of security, your sense of autonomy, and it makes you kind of like struggle with having to see things play out and then just imagining yourself in those positions, and helplessness
Yeah.
above everything else, just helplessness, and just just this constant feeling in your head of like, oh my god, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, so this is one of those edge of your seat films, but it's kind of slow. It kind of takes you up there slowly. I think it's like 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer than that. Yeah, just a little bit shy of 2 hours. But yeah, it's one of those movies that it just leaves you with a lot of questions.
Hmm.
And then you have to ask yourself a lot of different questions about a lot of different things that went on in that film. And definitely a film that's ready, or like that's waiting for a rewatch from me. But yeah, that's my number 5 pick. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Definitely one of the most gut wrenching horror films I've ever seen. I mean, yeah, this one will stick with you. That's for sure.
Mhm.
That's that's all I got to say about that. But
But I didn't want to give much away for this film. Just watch it for yourself.
yeah,
I'm sure that
definitely.
if sometimes you like film and if you like horror film, you've heard about this movie.
Yeah,
If you haven't watched it, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Just check it out.
yeah. You've definitely seen the image of the woman standing there, the poster with the syringe.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah, great pick, dude. All right, my number 4 pick is going to be the Korean horror thriller, somewhat action horror thriller, I Saw the
I
Devil.
Saw the Devil. Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
love that movie.
yeah, this is a fantastic this is a fantastic horror film from 2010 Korea. I mean, Korea makes great cinema, dude. Great cinema.
Mhm.
And let me get this ash off of my. I'm smoking a cigar. I gotta get this ash off my laptop. There we go. Um, I Saw the Devil from 2010. Basically, to give you a synopsis of this film, on a dark road, taxi driver Kyung Chol comes across a scared female motorist stranded in a broken down vehicle. He pulls over, but not to help her. Um, when the woman's head is discovered in a local river, her devastated fiance, Kim Soo Hyun, a trained secret agent, becomes obsessed with hunting down her killer. Once he finds Kyung Chul, things get twisted. After brutally beating the murderer, Kim lets him go free, and a demented game of cat and mouse begins. I mean that dude, that description alone, I was like, I gotta fucking watch this. That sounds awesome, and it's
Yeah.
great because it's just like the synopsis says. It's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes into the film. It's a long movie too. It's like a 2.5 hour film. 20-30 minutes into the movie, he catches the serial killer, and he's a secret agent. I mean, this guy's like John Wick, and the serial killer is just some guy, and he's beating the shit out of the serial killer, got him at death's door, and you're like, this is 20-30 minutes into the movie. What the hell? It's over. And right when he's about to kill him, basically the synopsis didn't say it, but he has him swallow a small tracking device, gives him a little bit of money, lets him go free, and then starts hunting him. Basically puts the shoe on the other foot, gives him a taste of his own medicine. You're the fucking prey now, buddy. And of course, it's the whole classic idea of,
Mhm.
you know, if we, chase monsters or whatever, we might become
Mhm.
monsters ourselves, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And it is fantastic, man. It is fantastic. It's so emotionally resonating. It's gut wrenching. There's plenty of gore and just horrific imagery that'll turn your stomach and make you look away. This movie is not for the faint of heart. This has to rank as, I mean, top five most violent movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
at 100%. I mean,
And the
this makes
actors in that movie.
John Wick look like
Yeah.
you know it makes John Wick look like Looney Tunes, dude.
Yes. Yes. And dude, I'm looking up this movie right now because the actors in this movie, I mean, Sho Ming Sik
Right.
is like God tier. Obviously, he's the same actor from Old Boy.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
God, he's the serial
I mean,
killer in the film.
yes, yes, and he's insane. Um, and then another actor that I really love, Lee Byung-hun, the guy who plays the
Famous
main
in
character.
America as Storm Shadow from GI Joe.
Yes, but man, so underrated.
Yeah.
This guy is like somehow like the Korean version of like Mads Mikkelsen. Like he's
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Korean version of like Mads Mikkelsen.
He kind of looks like him a
Underrated,
little bit, honestly.
underrated
He
actor.
kind of
Like,
looks
'cause
like Matt Mickelson,
he
dude.
does. That's why I said it. That's why I said it. But somehow the fact that they just like pushed him off on like GI Joe and that's what he's known for here. I mean, what can you say about
He's the
that?
best part of GI Joe too,
Yeah.
because he's in a fucking league of his own, man.
Yeah, and
He was
that's
always
it.
the best part for me when I was a kid.
Yeah,
GI Joe,
yeah.
Storm Shadow, man. That actor he's awesome. But yeah,
He is.
he is phenomenal in this movie.
He is.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Definitely one of my favorite Korean films ever. Not just one of my favorite horror films, but one of my favorite Korean films of all time for sure.
Mhm.
Right up there with The Man from Nowhere, and Parasite. I mean, it stands up there with those heavy swingers.
Yeah, and people
That
don't
came
talk
out
about
wrong. Heavy
this.
swingers.
People don't talk about they didn't come out wrong. People don't talk about this director much. What's his name? Kim Ji Won, right? Yeah, Kim Ji Won. People don't talk about him much because I feel like he's kind of overshadowed by Bong Joon-ho or Park Chan-wook. So
Yeah.
people kind of just leave him be. But this guy is extremely underrated.
He's awesome.
Great filmmaker. I mean, just from I've seen three movies of him: A Tale of Two Sisters, I Saw the Devil, and A Bittersweet Life. All of those movies I've liked. All of those movies I've
Yeah.
rated positively, and you know that I love A Bittersweet Life, and I love I Saw the Devil. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy needs way more attention on him. People, I mean, he needs to be making just whatever movies he wants.
Yeah. I saw A Bittersweet Life as well. It's a great film as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Another great Korean action film.
Hmm.
But yeah, that is my number 4. I think we're on your number 4, right?
My number four is Monday Night Raw, the fight between Shawn Michaels and John Cena from 2009. No holds barred. My
This is a
number
horror list. You gotta at least say like the Inferno match between Kane and like Bray Wyatt or something.
no. The my number four film is Raw. Specifically the
Oh, Raw.
2016
Okay.
film. Yeah, directed by Juliette Ducournau. This is a body horror film, French
Yep.
film. Um, this is a notorious film
Yep.
because when this movie was making the rounds, it was like, oh, people keep throwing up and leaving the
Yeah.
movie theater midway. So there was a lot of that. There was like two guys from our school who like threw up watching the movie and
Yeah.
left, didn't come
Yeah.
back. So
Yeah. I didn't
suffice
want
it
to
to
eat
say,
after watching this movie.
I was very excited to watch this film
Yeah.
at the time. And this is something that I would say is kind of like on the vampire film like subgenre.
Yeah.
Um, Specifically, this is a movie about cannibalism. This is a movie about a character who starts the movie as a vegetarian. It's forced to eat meat for the first time, and then it awakens within the character that they're a cannibal. And then everything from then on in the movie is just kind of this push and pull struggle with the character and you know within themselves of like, God, I'm having these uncontrollable urges to kill people and eat them,
Hmm.
funnily enough.
And
And
like
then,
vampire films, it's like there's a very sexual undertone to it as well.
yes, yes, absolutely. And then so then the movie explores those elements. Obviously, from us talking about how people keep throwing up watching this movie, it's very graphic. You see people eat other people, and not in the and not like in that watching the Walking Dead zombies thing. It's just like in a weirdly gruesome way that I guess for a lot of people it just provokes this feeling of like I'm gonna throw up watching this.
Yeah.
Um, and ultimately, ultimately then outside of the cannibalism element and that horror body horror element of it, it's really just a movie about I guess like understanding I guess her family line, because then it just becomes like
Yeah.
a family movie and like a movie about her bonding with her family or being like, I guess we're cannibals, and then I guess the consequences of that, because then it's ultimately uh, a theme that I've always kind of been obsessed with when it comes to writing stories, and it's about characters being characters wrestling with themselves about elements of themselves and of their being that they can't fix. That's why I've written vampire movies before because it's just a fascinating
Yeah.
thing. Just being like, "Oh, I'm a vampire. What else am I supposed to do?" Um, Incredible movie. Another movie that I've given a 9 out of 10. Might even rate it higher if I watch it again. I don't recommend this movie. If you're skittish, don't watch this. If you don't like gruesome imagery, if you don't like grotesque things or body horror elements, if you don't like any of those things, if you have a sensitive stomach and you feel like you could throw up watching this, if you can feel like you can throw up watching The Fly, don't watch this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
But if this sounds interesting to you, check it out because I think it's a great film.
Hmm. My favorite scene in this film, the one that sticks out to me that I always remember, is that great scene. It's like her own sort of Buffalo Bill scene where she's like dancing in
Hmm.
front of the mirror, and she's listening to like horrorcore
Yeah,
rap on her
yeah,
earbuds,
I
and she's
remember
like
that.
really wanting to eat somebody, that she's
Yeah.
also dating. It's like I like that scene.
Yeah.
That's a dope
Yeah.
scene, man. Great pick, dude. Great pick.
Thanks. What's your number three, brother?
My number 3 horror film of all time. We're in the top 3 now, folks.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do 3, 2, and then honorable mentions, and then what comes after that? Number 1, I think. Number
And then we
3.
also have a zero.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have a one and a zero.
So number 3, my number 3 horror film of all time is Hereditary.
Mm-hmm. I
Of
was wondering
course.
where this one was going to land for you.
Was there ever any doubt?
No.
This also holds the honor of being. If this was a list of scariest horror films of all time, this would be number 1
Mm-hmm.
because this is the scariest movie I've ever seen. Hereditary from 2018.
It's up
I
there
think
for
it.
me for sure.
Yeah, I think it holds that honor for many people. Probably our generation's Exorcist, in terms of like the movie that we'll look back on one day and be like, this was high art that scared everybody, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if you haven't seen Hereditary, if you're not familiar with it, the plot goes when the matriarch of the Graham family passes away, her daughter and grandchildren begin to unravel cryptic and increasingly terrifying secrets about their ancestry, trying to outrun the sinister fate they have inherited. Yeah, hard to talk about a lot about this movie without giving stuff away, so I'm not really going to get into any more plot than that.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie, I saw it in theaters when it first came out. And you probably remember me texting you when I got out of the theater, like, dude, I'm traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
I felt my cage was rattled after I saw this movie. I remember sitting in the theater to watch this movie, and it gets started, and it's like, oh, this is a little creepy. There's some creepy stuff, but it's also a drama in a way. I mean, there's a lot of great drama in it, and the director Ari Aster talks about how he wanted to do horror, but he also wanted to do a family drama as well, and he succeeds in both regards with flying colors. And I sat down in the theater. There's some great drama. It's got a great hook. There's a nice little creepy scene at the beginning to kind of get under your skin a little bit, and something happens in the first act. And when that thing happens, I said to myself, "Oh shit! I paid for my ticket. I'm in this. I'm strapped into the roller coaster." And it's that feeling. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but like when I was a kid, roller coasters were still scary. There'd be that moment where you're strapped in and the roller coaster's going up, 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 and you're just like, "Fuck! I can't turn back now. I'm strapped in." And that's the feeling I got from watching this movie. And again, I can't really talk about the plot because I can't give anything away if you haven't seen this movie. But this movie had me in abject terror from beginning to end, and for me is the scariest film I've ever seen. And hats off to Toni Collette, who is an amazing actress and should have won an Oscar for this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal.
This is a movie that I know that that I've seen this movie. That I've seen this movie like 4 or 5 times. This is one of the this is because we saw it together. We saw it in the movie theater. I've seen it with my siblings. I've seen this movie in so many different settings, and this is always the number one choice of when people want to see a scary movie. And it's like, oh man, I just want to see a scary movie. And it's like, have you seen this one? This is the one.
Yeah.
This is the scary movie. If you're trying to watch a scary movie, this is the one that's gonna make you feel like it's gonna make you regret your decisions.
Yeah.
And you and I have had so many back and forths about this movie because like every time I see this movie, I'm like, I'm gonna leave it where it is. Like my appreciation for this movie never increases, it never decreases, it never increases. But this movie is terrifying, and I can't take that away from this movie. And it terrifies me, and it terrified me the first time I watched it. Yeah. So I think that's a great pick. Another one that I knew you were going to have in your list, and I was just wondering where it was going to fall.
Yeah. You know
No,
me, man.
definitely great film. I
Yep.
knew you. I know you. It's like it's like I know. I was like, there's certain movies. I know he's gonna put certain movies in there. Um, have you had any predictions for me? Have you been like, I know he's gonna put that or this thing in
Yeah,
there?
I knew you were going to do Wreck for sure, and I knew Carrie was probably going to be in there as well.
Yeah, yeah,
You surprised me with Raw. I think I didn't realize you had that as much of an appreciation for that film.
yeah.
Um,
I have an out of 10. That's an out of 10 for me in my letterbox.
yeah, but you continue surprising me because I would say it's fair to say probably out of both of us, I'm probably the bigger horror fan, and that's
Yes.
that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think I'm making a controversial statement there. So
Yeah.
it's harder. I think it's harder for me to predict what yours are going to be, so you get to enjoy more surprises.
It's I went on Letterboxd and I clicked like show me all my horror like films and I've seen 210 of them. I know you've seen more than me, but I was like, oh my god, I've seen a lot of these fucking movies.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so for you, the listener, this is coming from two guys that have seen an insane amount of horror movies.
yeah.
These are well curated lists.
I had to do a process of elimination last night. I first compiled everything that would be a contender, and then I just
Hmm.
crossed them out from there. And it was
Hmm.
challenging at
Yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah. The same for me.
I had to really think about it.
Yeah. But that being said, my number three, and this might be a predictable choice because you, I mean, you might have, you might, you probably know that this was coming somewhere.
Yeah.
Number three, Rosemary's Baby,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
which is a fascinating film in the sense that it kind of pairs well with you having been talking about Hereditary just now,
Yeah.
because this film deals with cults and with like satanic cults. And this is, I mean, directed by Roman Polanski, 1968, starring Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow and that one guy that's made a bunch of movies, John Cassavetes. Yeah, Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes. And this is a film about this young couple. You know, this young woman who marries this man and this man is an actor. And when we first get introduced to these characters, he's struggling to get parts. He's kind of feeling down on himself. He's not getting jobs, and this is I don't know what the opposite of like Munchausen syndrome is. You know, that syndrome where you think you're sick,
Yeah.
because this is one of those movies where it's like about the people around you. You know, it's one of those movies where it's so uncomfortable, like the thought of it, but it's like just being around somebody, like you're being around your husband and he's just gaslighting you and isolating you
Yeah. It's like
and
Munchausen's
introduce
by proxy. It's like because they're all
yeah,
telling Rosemary that something's wrong with her, right? If
right,
I remember.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because it's not, you know, it's not that she thinks anything's wrong with her, it's that they're saying that things are wrong with her.
Yeah.
And they're just feeding her ideas and lies and thoughts, and her husband isolates her and all her friends are just his friends. You know, he completely puts her in a corner. She doesn't know who to run to. So this is one of those psychological horror movies that it just you just watch a character deal with so much paranoia. And through sections of these films, you don't know what to make of the movie. You know, you're like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if Rosemary is just kind of like having this like pregnancy, like brain thing going on, like the movie's trying to imply, or if she's actually right. And it gets to the point in this film where you don't know who to trust, and the character herself doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't trust anybody. She keeps having these visions and these dreams of things that may or may not have happened, that her husband may or may not have drugged her, and that things may or may not have happened to her involving this cult full of old people and the devil. The devil makes an appearance in this film.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's a disturbing film. That's really the best way
Yeah.
to put it. It's just disturbing and it messes with you psychologically. And then when this movie kind of reaches its climax, the reveal of this film is devastating.
Spine
It's
chilling.
devastating. It's
Oof.
literally spine chilling. The way that this movie ends is horrific. And just like when the character opens her eyes and you're able to open your eyes as an audience member and you realize all that was going on, the extent to which it was going on, how far reaching like the roots of this cult were,
Yeah.
all the people who were involved, the way that they had access to their house, you know, it's insane. um Yeah, I mean, I have chills just talking about this movie.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie an immense amount of times. At some point, I had this movie just on loop, I remember. Because the filmmaking in this film is exceptional.
Yeah.
Exceptional. I mean, the camera movement, how he blocks the scenes, and how Polanski just like introduces you to the setting, introduces you to this apartment, makes you feel comfortable with the apartment, with all these tracking shots, all these following shots, all these wide shots inside the apartment. You feel like you know this space, and then how things then are subsequently revealed to you, then you're like, oh, I actually didn't know this at all. It's sad. This is really a sad and just kind of like very I mean, again, just kind of a devastating movie, honestly.
Yeah.
And I this is to this day one of my top 10, like, this is one of my favorite movies ever. So yeah, Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. Great pick, dude. Great pick. Um, Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is a great companion to Hereditary too. I mean, if you
Mhm.
really want, like, you could do a double feature. If you just want to
Yeah,
be
you could.
traumatized and go
You
into
could.
like
Yeah.
shock, basically
Yeah,
just
because
watch those back to back.
and if you really wanted to double it down even more, put The Exorcist in there and
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
those two movies.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And her husband's such a little rat too. What a
Yeah, he's a weasel. He's a
fucking
weasel.
ugh. I
John
hate that guy.
Cassavetes.
Hate that guy, man. Nah, I hate that character. But I mean, great character,
Mhm.
so well done.
Mhm.
But great pick, dude. On to all right, we're in the top two now.
Top two. Yeah, top two. Let's
So
go.
my number two horror film of all time, you could probably guess it. Funny Games,
Hmm. I
2007.
There's another one where I was like, I wonder where this is gonna land
Yeah.
for Mr. Jake.
Now this is so. There's two versions of this film. This was an excuse me, originally an Austrian film by Michael Haneke from
Hmm.
1997. And that one's pretty good, but I prefer the American version. Basically, he did a scene for scene, shot for shot remake, but in English. And I think I like the one. I like the performances better. I think there's better in the American version in 2007. There's better performances in terms of the physical performances and some of the improvisation of the actors, particularly Michael Pitt as the murderous psychopath Paul in this film, that I think trumps the original. And then on a technical level, just the way it's shot and the way it looks, I think looks better than the original film as well. And
Hmm.
Funny Games, if you haven't seen it, it is a home invasion horror film,
Hmm.
but it's not like done how you would expect. It's not dudes in masks and invading the house. It's very much more of it hits a lot closer to home. Basically, the plot is when Anne, husband George, and son Georgie arrive at their holiday home, they are visited by a pair of polite and seemingly pleasant young men. Armed with deceptively sweet smiles and some golf clubs, they proceed to terrorize and torture the tight knit clan, giving them until the next day to survive. These are so the two young men in question, funnily enough, named Paul and Peter, which
Hmm.
was an interesting choice by Michael Haneke to give them sort of like biblical names,
Hmm.
um, named Paul and Peter. These are two of the most demented characters ever put to film. I mean, just absolutely demented watching them, you know, psychologically and physically torture uh two a man, a woman, and their child, their
Hmm.
10-year-old boy, is very hard to watch. It's
Hmm.
not a gory film, not very gory at least. It's not, don't go into expecting that. It's very psychological. A lot of the violence is done really expertly by Michael Haneke in such a way that's way more disturbing. So think of the scene in Reservoir Dogs when the cop is getting tortured and the Mr. Blonde, I think is his name, is slicing off the cop's ear, and the camera sort of pans away, and it actually
Hmm.
makes it way more disturbing than if they showed him slicing off the ear, because it leaves it to your imagination. That it's done like that in this film, and that makes it way scarier because you're picturing something worse than they could have done with practical effects. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, again, these two characters. That was the first thing that hit me when I watched this for the first time. I was just appalled by how demented and sadistic and just unfeeling these characters are. I think the
Hmm.
word unfeeling, just in the face of this family crying and begging and pleading and sobbing. I mean, just completely, they take it with a grain of salt. The whole thing, it's,
Hmm.
as the title suggests, is a funny game to them. And it
Hmm.
is horrifying. I've had nightmares about this movie.
Yes.
This is appropriately actually number 2 on my top 10 horror list, but this is also the second scariest film I've ever seen, second
Hmm.
only to Hereditary.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, check it out. Not for the faint of heart, but if you like that sort of thing, check it out. I think the biggest selling point of this movie for me is the suspense as well. The suspense, it it's Hitchcock levels of just pulling that rubber band, like I said before, and just seeing how far
Hmm.
they can stretch it. It will drive you mad, the
Hmm.
suspense of this
Hmm.
movie. Um, and it's not only one of my favorite horror films of all time, but one of my favorite films of all time because
Yeah.
it's so amazing. Talk a little bit about your experience with this movie, Edward, because you
Now
introduced me to this.
I will refrain from commenting, and I'm going to say that was a great pick.
Okay, okay. Oh, is this on your list? Is that
This
why?
is on my list. Yeah, this is a
Okay,
spoiler for my list.
okay, okay. All right. What's your number two?
My number two, and this is going to spoil what my number one is, but my number two is The Wailing. So my number one is going to be Funny Games.
Oh shit!
My number two is The Wailing, the Korean film, 2016 film, written and directed by Na Hong Jin.
I still need to see it.
This is a fascinating movie. I heard about this film. Um, I don't even remember how I heard about this. It was like a long time ago that I heard about it, and it was because the movie I think was just making noise, like with Cannes, like in Cannes Film Festival and like other film festivals. People were talking about it. It has a great, it had a great commercial and critical run. So this is like a very critically successful film. This is a long movie, by the way. This movie is like near 3 hours, I believe. If not 3 hours, I think it's just like shy of 3 hours. This is a film that unravels and it kind of goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it just keeps going on and on and on and it kind of plays with genre a little bit where there's sections of the film that are more kind of like a police procedural like thriller. There's sections of the film that dabble more in maybe like absurdist, like surreal horror, with maybe a tinge of like comedy. And then there's sections of this film that deal with like the occult and with more religious themes or like kind of more of like the demonic possession kind of thing, which to me has always kind of been one of the biggest kind of like winning factors when it comes to movies, like really having an impact on me when it comes to horror films. And this film, bar none, is the film that has had the biggest impact on me when it comes to um, feeling terror and just
Wow,
feeling terrified, terrified. I mean,
wow.
I don't want to oversell this film. I don't know if I just had like a very singular experience with this movie. I saw this movie in one sitting, and I just kind of went through it. I mean, I paused a couple of times, a long ass movie, pause 10 minutes, come back to it. And the movie, like I said, it kind of breaks itself into sections. And it just kind of fools you, into sometimes like a sense of security because you think like, oh, I know what's going on now. I know where this movie's going. And at least for me, the answer was no. I didn't know. And I as it was with Audition, I would say, but if you're gonna watch the movie, don't look into this movie and don't read into what this movie is about. Just the general idea with this movie that I feel like it's like a good kind of thing to go into it without spoiling yourself is that this is a movie about a town that falls into crisis and the police get involved and then they're just trying to figure out what's going on in the town, you know, what's going on. And it deals with a lot of different issues, when it comes to xenophobia, when it comes to um again the occult, fear of the other, fear of strangers, um and again it just kind of keeps escalating and escalating and escalating to a point where it becomes almost like this folklore tale, and the fact that it gets to that point, you know for me, made it the even so more terrifying. And there are scenes in this movie that were just bone chilling for me when I first watched this film. And when I say that I've never been more scared in my adult life after watching a movie, I've never been more scared of my adult life as watching a movie than when I
Really?
watched this movie. Never been
Wow.
more scared about after watching a movie. This movie haunted me, dude, for like weeks.
You've sold me,
Weeks,
dude. Holy shit.
dude.
I
This
gotta
movie
bump.
haunted
I gotta
me
give this
for
some priority.
weeks, man. For weeks. I had nightmares about this movie. I would just feel like scared, while being alone at night.
Wow. Oh
I
man.
So I don't know. Like I said to you again, I don't know if this was a singular experience for me. The movie's really highly rated. The people who've seen this movie seemingly have a lot of people have had similar experiences. I can only hope that if you watch this movie, you have a similar experience. Just because I know that that's what a horror fan goes into a horror movie like this one trying to get out of it, you know.
Yeah.
But horrifying movie, horrifying movie. I have nothing else to say. That's the best that I can say. I mean, as an adult person, there's nothing has scared me more than this film.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you've sold me, dude. I have. I mean, this has been on my watch list for a while, but
Yeah,
I gotta watch this thing now. Holy shit. That's you've sold me, sir.
yeah. Well, you know my number one. What's yours?
All right. Well, let's do honorable mentions
Oh
first.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'll do mine, then you do yours, and then we'll go one for one.
Okay,
All right. So I'm just gonna rattle them off real quick. I'm
I
not
will
even gonna
too.
really talk about them.
Yeah.
So for me, my honorable mentions that I just had to give a shout out to, you got Carrie, the original Halloween, the original
Hmm.
Alien, The Shining, The Mummy from 1959, not the Brendan Fraser version. That's more of an action film, but I could throw that in as well. But I really enjoy the 1959 Mummy with Christopher Lee, the
Hmm.
Hammer British version. It's great. Um, Jeepers Creepers, uh, Dawn of the Dead, the original from '78. Sinister, gotta shout that out. That's one of my scariest.
Hmm.
The original Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, I feel like I also have to throw The Descent into my honorable mentions.
Hmm.
And then, as a fun one, but I'm actually serious here, the Thriller video, Michael Jackson's Thriller music video. Got to
Yeah.
throw that in there. That scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
love that thing, man.
Yeah.
All right, man. What are your
Well,
honorable mentions, sir?
for me, my honorable mentions are the first VHS movie, like those movies based on like those
Yeah.
VHS tapes, because there's a couple of segments in there that really got to me. So the first VHS, the Robert Eggers movie, The Lighthouse, the Lee Whannell movie, The Invisible Man, which you and I saw together in theaters.
Yes. I just rewatched
Hereditary,
that this past weekend. So good.
really, yeah, Hereditary. 28 Days Later, a movie that we watched because of you and the podcast, Thesis, the
Yes.
1996 Spanish horror thriller film.
Oh, throw that in
Um,
there for me too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so Thesis is in there. The Shining is in there. I did not put The Shining in my top 10 purposefully because I was like, I'm not going to put The Shining. It's like such a cliche. I didn't put it in there. It's a movie that I have
Yeah.
as a 9 out of 10, but I was just not going to put it. Um, The Exorcist, Psycho, which you talked about, Night of the Living Dead is on there too, Jaws, White Christmas, which I also watched because of you.
Me Black
Um,
Christmas.
Yeah, Black Christmas. Yeah, White Christmas. um, what is it? Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien and Aliens, The Thing, American Werewolf in London,
Mm.
and a movie that just did not make the top 10 for me, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned several. American Werewolf in London. Throw that into my honorable mentions as well. Thesis, of course. The
Hmm.
Thing, yes. Um, yeah, there's so many honorable mentions I could throw in there. I mean, if you
Yeah,
anyone who is listening
I
who's
agree
like,
with those
how could
ones
he
you said
not put
too.
this in there? Da da da. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's too
trust me,
many.
it's
Yeah,
probably on there, but it's like,
yeah,
it's just
we've
so
seen
there's
it.
so many great
Yeah.
there are a lot of great horror films. As many crappy ones as there are, we have been gifted with a great genre that has a lot to offer. So,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
um, okay, so it's on to me for the number one.
Yes. What do you got? Surprises.
Well, this is going to be no surprise to you, sir, but my number one horror film of all time is the original Hellraiser.
Yes.
Um, it's the original Hellraiser, man. I think the original Hellraiser is, I think it's the greatest horror film ever made. That's that's me, man. I think
Mhm.
the original Hellraiser is the greatest horror film ever made. How can you say it, Jake? How can you say that? Blasphemy. Blasphemy.
Yeah.
You mean
No,
it's
I was
better than
wondering where it was gonna fall for you.
Jake, you mean to tell me that Hellraiser's better than The Exorcist, The Shining, it's better than Nightmare on Elm Street, it's better than Halloween? Yes. Yes. Fuck yes. Hellraiser is better than The Exorcist. It's better than The Shining. It's better than Rosemary's Baby. It's better than Halloween. It's better than Nightmare on Elm Street. It's better than any fucking horror movie you can throw at me. Hellraiser, the original Hellraiser from 1987, is the best. It's the best horror film of all time. If you're not familiar, you've certainly seen the Pinhead character, if nowhere else than your local Party City or Halloween store as a mask. He's the pale faced bald dude with a bunch of pins coming out of his head.
That scares a lot
He
of people.
Exactly. The film concerns sexual deviant Frank, who inadvertently opens a portal to hell when he tinkers with a box he bought while abroad. The act unleashes gruesome beings called Cenobites who tear Frank's body apart.
Mhm.
When Frank's brother and his wife when Frank's brother and his wife Julia move into Frank's old house, they accidentally bring what is left of Frank back to life. Frank then convinces Julia, his one-time lover, to lure men back to the house so he can use their blood to reconstruct himself. I think what
Mhm.
that description leaves out is that not only that, but he also has to figure out how he's going to get away from the aforementioned demonic Cenobites who are
Right.
hot on his trail.
Right.
Um, and what a fucking, I mean, just as I read it, what a great plot. What an amazing plot. I mean, what a great idea. It's based on a novel by Clive Barker called The Hellbound Heart. And Clive Barker also directed the film. He made the film. He was an author. This was his first film that he ever directed. Incredible. I mean, what an amazing job. The when you watch this movie, I mean, it's made with the craft that William Friedkin made Exorcist, with which Roman Polanski made Rosemary's Baby, John Carpenter made Halloween. It's made with that level of craft from a first-time director, which is incredible. I mean, that's amazing to me. When I watch this movie, I can't believe that a first-time director is doing such an amazing job with the
Mhm.
lighting, the shots, just the presentation of visual information. It's incredible. And one of the greatest scenes in all of horror cinema to me is when our it does that kind of thing where it head hops with protagonists. So midway through the
Mhm.
film, Kirsty, who is the brother, the not the guy in the attic, but his brother's daughter.
Right.
So the evil guy's niece basically becomes the de facto main character midway through the film when she accidentally opens the puzzle box and the Cenobites emerge, and we are seeing them. They get their first scene. We see glimpses of them early in the film. So again, it's like Jaws. It keeps them under wraps for very, very long. And then finally you get the big sort of reveal, and the way they introduce themselves to her and present themselves, and the way Clive Barker presents them with the lighting and the
What a good sound effect.
and the fog, swirling around, and the just ethereal sort of ghostly lighting of the scene, and Pinhead in all of his glory just standing there saying, the box, you opened it, we came. It's like, holy shit, this is awesome, man. In my opinion, it's the greatest horror film ever made. It did I say that once or twice? It's it has everything. It has the chills, the suspense, and the gore and the body horror, but it's done. It's all in service of a fantastic story. And when people talk about this movie as if it's some gore fest that has no meaning to the madness, I question their sanity. I question whether we watched the same film. And I, to be quite honest, think they're fucking crazy when I hear that. Or I don't think they're crazy. I think that's crazy when I hear that. And it spawned, dubious sequels. The second film, I think, is pretty damn good. The following sequels I haven't even bothered with because they're, like any horror franchise, just got dumber and dumber. And it spawned a great franchise, though, in other forms of media. Clive wrote a follow-up novel, which I thought was decent. I didn't really love what he did with the mythology in the follow-up novel, but I still thought the story itself on its own was decent. And the comic books are awesome, too. I think if you discount, besides the original film and the original novel, Hellraiser is at its best in comic book form. Like, that was a story that was made for comics, and there are great Hellraiser comics, and they do awesome things with the story in those that they just never were given the chance to do on film. They attempted to in the second one in Hellbound and succeeded in some ways, I think.
Yeah.
With more of a grand story, an epic set in hell, but yeah, I will always love this film, and I'll vouch for it till the end. I'll die on that hill.
You are the biggest Hellraiser defender there. And you know my interactions with these films. If somebody who's seen the first one, the second one, and the latest one, these are films that I 100% respect and have so much appreciation for, despite the fact that I cannot, within me, there's not the as much love and appreciation for these films as there is within you.
Sure.
But I do love these movies. I do love these movies regardless, and I think they're actually pretty great, despite my bashing of them sometimes through the years. Especially when I first saw them. I know that you and I maybe had like some kind of back and forth about them, but I do have a lot of appreciation for these films, and they've grown on me. I want to rewatch the first 1 and 2 again, just to kind of see where I'm at with those films, because I do think about those movies often, just knowing how much appreciation you have for them.
Yeah.
And that's as good, the process of elimination continued, I knew it was like, this is going to be Jake's number 1.
Yeah. I knew you knew it was coming. You felt it. You felt it coming. Yeah. Of course, like when I got to the top 3 and it still wasn't there, you were probably like, oh, it's got to be number 1.
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, where Funny Games are going to fall for you. I was like, it's either going to be 1 or 2. It's like, it depends on where Funny Games is. If Funny Games is 2, then Hellraiser's 1. And if Hellraiser's 2, then Funny Games is 1. I knew that was going to be part of the case.
Yeah. And the way I talk about the original Hellraiser, the way I talk about it, if you're unfamiliar with it, which most people are familiar with what Hellraiser is, I mean, I almost talk about it as if it's a cult classic, but it's not. It is a very well known horror film. I mean, Pinhead is, if there was a Mount Rushmore of horror villains and it was more than four, because of course on your Mount Rushmore it's pretty much like Freddy, Jason, Michael, and probably Leatherface or Chucky,
Mm-hmm.
or you could interchange that last one, that fourth one between
Mm-hmm.
like Leatherface, Chucky, or Ghostface maybe. Um, but if you had like 6, 7 faces on there, Pinhead's definitely on there. It is a well loved franchise. It is a
Mm-hmm.
very famous franchise. It's up there. Although I don't think it really belongs with the slashers. I can understand why it does because the sequels after two went in that direction, but the first two Hellraiser films do not function as slashers
Mm-hmm.
at all, at all.
Mm-hmm. No,
Um,
no, absolutely.
but yeah, let's get into your number one, sir.
Well, my number one, as it became clear, is Funny Games, the film, as you talked about, written and directed, Michael Haneke, remake of his 97 Austrian film. Um, I have not seen the 97 Austrian film, funnily enough. I've still only seen Funny Games, like the American version.
Oh,
I've seen this
interesting.
movie multiple times, and as you know, I saw this movie tragically as a young man, as a young boy. I saw this movie for whatever reason. It was one of those things, and I guess this is a story that I would have gone on if I didn't want to talk about it like as the number one film. But it's one of those things where it's like growing up in the Dominican Republic. We had a channel. It was like channel 10 and sometimes channel 7, where in which they would just randomly show movies. It doesn't matter what movies they were. It could, I mean, I don't know who was making these decisions. They would just show random movies. I don't think they never had licensing. This was not actually like a movie channel. It was just like a channel that was like a local channel in my country. And sometimes they would switch up their programming and just have movies. Um, so yeah, it was one of those movies where it was introduced to me, and I wasn't even looking for it. I remember just kind of being bored, just switching through channels, and I remember that I was alone at our house. My mom was there, but I think my mom was just like napping or sleeping. It was like a Saturday,
Yeah.
and my siblings were just not home, so it was just me. And so I was looking for things, and in this exact same way is how I saw like a handful of movies. Because another movie that I saw like within like my childhood years was The Ring. I saw The Ring as a kid. I saw like the Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher. Like it was like a handful of movies that I saw that were just like adult movies I had no business watching. Somehow they were showing these movies, and I ended up watching them either alone or with my siblings. Um, and this is a film that I watched by myself, and I was just switching channels, and I was just captivated because I was like, what is going on here? I was like, what is going on with this family? Why are these guys harassing them? And then ultimately it escalated from there. And somewhere within me, there's probably trauma from having seen this
Yeah.
movie because then obviously I was always kind of afraid growing up of like home invasions or people coming into our house. Like, anything of that sort. I developed like a huge kind of like thing. I overcame that eventually. But I just kind of had that in my head, especially because there's people to whom that happened to that we knew growing up in the country that I grew up in.
Oof.
That happened to that shit happened to them. So I've had I don't know why my voice was breaking there, but there's like
It's the
the fact that
trauma,
I've
man.
exactly there's like trauma, and then just like by proxy of knowing that other people have experienced these things, and then just dealing with having to come to terms with the fact that this movie's showing you that there are despicable people on this planet,
Yeah.
you know. And this movie shows you, like you said, two of the most despicable human beings, flippant about the atrocities that they were committing, flippant, flippant. Like that's the best word. It's just not
Yeah.
caring. It's like they were not interacting with humans. Like they were playing like a video game, or like they were playing with like some bug that they just discard. It's like, okay, we're done playing here.
Yeah.
These toys are not fun anymore. We're not gonna play with these toys. We're gonna go and play with new toys. So the movie also has this element of just kind of like um this like unending cycle of just kind of being like these people are these entities. They're not even human. They're like this weird Peter and Paul cartoon entities, like
Yeah.
this weird like angels or demons things. And it's like a luck of the draw. Did they go to your house? Did they not go to your house? Did you do something that bothered them? Did you not do something that bothered them? This is just a misfortune that's happening to you. It's like a fucking natural disaster. And that's the best way to put it. These guys are just like natural disasters. It's just like a cosmic thing, like fucking Galactus or something
Yeah.
in the X-Men. It's just it doesn't matter. There's no morality attached to it. It's just happening. And watching human beings deal with it. Again, this movie was just kind of traumatizing for me watching this film, and it stuck with me through
Yeah.
years. It stuck with me my entire life. It stuck with me so much that you and I talked about it. I introduced you to this movie, and I was like, dude, this is the movie that fucking
Yeah.
traumatized me as a kid.
Yeah.
Um,
They
so
even do
it's
it works on that level too with them being sort of a force because they do that Joker thing from the Dark
mhm,
Knight. They before the Dark Knight came out a year before, they did that thing where he gives him multiple versions of he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And he gives him
right,
like three versions of like, "Oh, this is where we come from and this is
exactly, yeah,
and you're
yeah,
like,
and it
"Oh, well,
right, and like you
it's like it
said
doesn't
before,
matter. They're just fucking they're devices, they're plot
exactly,
devices
exactly.
basically."
And like you said, before it was like in vogue, before Nolan did it, like Haneke was kind of deconstructing these tropes and just kind of saying like, hey, there's no explanation to these guys. We're not gonna come out here and like give you an origin story. Like it doesn't really matter.
No.
And I remember when you and I talked about this film, there is a scene near the end of this film that had stuck with me has stuck with me through my entire life. And you and I,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. Is this scene with these characters are like in this boat, and you're like, what's gonna happen? Where are things going from here? And then the way that it's handled is so heartbreaking and so kind of like infuriating in a way and
Yeah.
disconcerting, and it just makes you feel uncomfortable. Um, yeah, this is for my money, not the most terrifying film of all time, I would say, because I might give that to The Wailing for me and my experiences,
Yeah.
but I would say that this is the most like psychologically scaring and traumatizing and horrific film. Like when it comes to psychological horror, this is it. This is the best one
Yeah.
I've ever seen. This movie is also immaculate. Michael Haneke is one of my favorite filmmakers, and this movie is just a masterclass. I mean, there's not much that you can say against this film or against the fact or even the musical choices, how things are handled, the acting, even for the fucking little kid. Little
Yeah.
kid is incredible. Yeah, not really much else to say about this movie that hasn't been said. Jake and I will probably do at some point a commentary on this film, maybe next October, who knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but this, I mean, again, for my money, the greatest psychological horror film of all time. And then for me, The Wailing is just the greatest, like just plain old. I'm terrified and I'm scared and
Yeah.
I'm alone horror film of all time.
You sold that one, man. Holy shit. I got to check that out. All right, man. We did it, dude. Feels good.
I know. I know. It took longer than we expected. I think it took us like over 2 hours,
Yeah.
but we did it. Everybody, we hope that
It
you
was worth
enjoyed
it.
this. We obviously, as you could probably tell, we worked hard to put this together. There was bound to be overlap. I'm glad that there was only one overlap, and it was bound to happen. That we were going to overlap with that film, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are leaving here with some recommendations. I sure am living here with some recommendations. There's movies that Jake has been telling me about for years that I haven't seen, and he
Yeah.
sold those movies to me in this top 10.
Yeah.
And I
Ditto.
hope that we were able to do that for you guys.
Yep. No, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening and have a happy and safe Halloween. Happy
Yeah,
Halloween,
yeah.
everybody.
Happy Halloween. Take it easy. Next time on Film Tangents.